Okay. All right. Bobby Kennedy's going. When I was trying to find, the Fox News link wasn't working right. So Bobby Kennedy is getting grilled by these guys right now. I'm starting it over. I'm going to play it. I'm going to play this at 1.5x speed for now. So if you're catching up, which you should, that's what I would do. So, but first, real quick, I just have to mention that Chuck Schumer just talked about Doge. That's what showed on Fox News. It was out of whack. It wasn't showing the Bobby Kennedy for some reason. So, but it did show Chuck Schumer give us a load of absolute horse shit. Okay. About Doge and Elon Musk. They are doing everything they can. They want to hide in the dark. They don't want to let the public know what's going on. They don't want nothing to see here, guys. We don't want to audit all the shady, already mind-blowing amount of shady shit that our government has been doing with our actual money. No, I mean, the public doesn't want to see that, do we? No. I mean, this is like Hitler running the country. No. Sorry, Chucky. Nope. This is like called Elon Musk doing what he's asked to do, which is to audit what our treasury and our government, our shady ass corrupt government is doing with the money we spend, our tax dollars. Hello. So, and listen, I'm going to say it right now. Who are these dumbasses that keep electing these dumbass politicians? I hope people are getting their eyes opened. It's time to open our eyes. Okay. So that goes for all of these senators. We're going to hear a load of shit coming up. I can already just feel it. I can just sense it. There's going to be a ton of garbage. We just had a video the other night about vaccines. All right. The science is not settled. Now, this is the bullshit they're going to say. I don't care if you're a doctor, if you're a scientist, and you say the science is settled, it should actually be settled. But guess what? On vaccines, it's absolutely unequivocally not settled, because there's thousands and tens of thousands of doctors that have a lot to say about it, who you censored as misinformation. That's what oligarchies do. That's what the Catholic Church or whoever did when they put people to death for saying the world is round. Nope, that's not science. Sorry. Here's what science does. Test it, confirm, test, confirm, verify, re-verify, verify, re-verify. Anyone who says otherwise is not a scientist, is not a doctor, doesn't know science. To say the opposite is anti-science, period. Okay, just got to get that out there. Here we go.
Of saying we have to go faster in solving these threats to our nation as it relates to health. Now, we can have a big discussion, which I think you guys all want to have a big discussion about whether and when what happened in the Wuhan province. But I can tell you, we were the first city. We had the first patient. We had the first people who died in nursing homes. We had an emergency room at a hospital who basically was just begging for any equipment we could get them. The whole community stood up and moved as fast as we possibly could and broke down barriers to save lives. And that is what we have to continue to do on innovation. We cannot let another country get ahead of us on some sort of warfare issue and not have a response when it comes to a vaccine. So the most challenging, I wanted to vote for Mr. Kennedy in the context of my family's history. My dad stood behind his father the night his father gave the famous speech. I told him in my office, in my family, the Kennedys stood up. But when he answered Senator Cassidy's question, and he couldn't even give him the answer that, yes, the data is there to support vaccines today. I don't need any more data. All of a sudden.
Oh, not a science. Nope. That's the opposite of science. This person, Mrs. Cantwell, we're taking note. We're taking notes. Everyone who is going to try and pull this bullshit about the science is settled, get translation. They're owned and bought out by the vaccine big pharma company. All right. I'm going to write down every single name. All right.
I saw this world that we got affected by in Seattle not being stood up for. I need someone at HHS who is going to say we're going to be a leader in medical technology, science, vaccines. We are going to fight foreign powers. We are going to be there to provide global health. And I don't want a recalcitrant. I need a leader. And that is why I'm voting no.
Thank you. Senator Wyden and I have agreed that Senator Warnock will now speak. Following Senator Warnock, we will proceed to the vote, and then anyone else who wants to make remarks will be allowed to make remarks. Senator Warnock.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Chairman. At a rally a few months ago, Donald Trump said that he was going to allow Mr. Robbert Kennedy to, quote, go wild on health.
Yeah.
Go wild.
Go wild.
Of all the things that I can think of that I'd like to see a Secretary of Health and Human Services do, go wild is not on the list. Mr. Robbert Kennedy is manifestly unqualified.
It's to go wild to get these corrupt, shady, bought out, owned politicians out of here.
For the job he seeks. And in both my live and written questions for the record, he failed to commit to protecting access to affordable health care, failed to commit to protecting the people who are protecting us. The problem that the CDC has is that every day these noble civil servants and workers protect us from dangers that we don't see. And often you don't get credit for protecting people from things that they don't see. I simply do not trust him to oversee the CDC. He's unqualified, and I dare say everybody here knows it. We need a serious person at the helm of the HHS, an agency responsible for about half of the health of about half of all Americans. Mr. Kennedy appears more obsessed in chasing conspiracy theories than chasing solutions to lower healthcare costs for working families in Georgia.
Anti-science, like, are they going to figure out this doesn't work anymore to chasing conspiracy theories? It's anti-science. Hey guys, that doesn't work anymore. We're almost to a point these days with these damn politicians that if someone is chasing conspiracy theories, you know, it actually probably means it's true. Yep.
And to make sure that we are protected. The last thing we need is a dilettante dabbling in conspiracy theories at HHS. I cannot vote for a nominee who's not going to lower healthcare costs for Georgians, who's going to undermine basic science.
All right, Georgia. We got to wake. Is this Mr. Welsh? Who the hell is this? Get out of here. He's any dumbass that doesn't support Bobby F. Kennedy is anti-science and is a lunatic, period. I mean, it's so obvious. I'm going to be so pissed. I'm already feeling how pissed I'm going to be today.
In public health, who puts his own interests above the health and the well-being of others, for the health and well-being of all of our families, the people who count on us, to think about them in these rooms of power. I urge all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to look past politics and think of country. And
yeah. Hey, everybody, look past politics and think of country, not your pharmaceutical vaccine, Pfizer's, BlackRock's, Fidelities of the world. Yeah, we want to get you out. Get it. All right. Thanks. This is like a mirror to all senators who are either corrupt and bought out or who actually care about the American people. Now, this is the perfect mirror.
Find the moral courage to do what's right. Oppose this nomination.
Thank you, Senator Warnock. We now have not only a quorum, but all members of the committee are present. I move that the committee favorably report the nomination of the Honorable Robbert F. Kennedy Jr. of California to be Secretary of Health and Human Services. Is there a second? Second. There is a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Grassley. Aye. Mr. Grassley, aye. Mr. Cornyn. Aye. Mr. Cornyn, aye. Mr. Thune. Aye. Mr. Thune, aye. Mr. Scott. Aye. Mr. Scott, aye. Mr. Cassidy. Aye. Mr. Cassidy, aye. Mr. Langford. Aye. Mr. Langford, aye. Mr. Daines. Aye. Mr. Daines, aye. Mr. Young. Aye. Mr. Young, aye. Mr. Barrasso. Aye. Mr. Barrasso, aye. Mr. Johnson. Aye. Mr. Johnson, aye. Mr. Tillis. Aye. Mr. Tillis, aye. Mrs. Blackburn. Mrs. Blackburn, aye. Mr. Marshall. Aye. Mr. Marshall, aye. Mr. Wyden. No. Mr. Wyden, no. Ms. Cantwell. No. Ms. Cantwell, no. Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bennett, no. Mr. Warner. Mr. Warner, no. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Whitehouse, no. Ms. Hassan. Ms. Hassan, no. Ms. Cortez Masto. Ms. Cortez Masto, no. Ms. Warren. No. Ms. Warren, no.
Okay, they're gonna go back. We're gonna go back through this. This is not the final vote. This is like the vote for this committee, which is like the health committee or something. And he does repeat here.
Mr. Sanders. No. Mr. Sanders, no. Ms. Smith. No. Ms. Smith, no. Mr. Lujan.
Whoa.
Mr. Lujan, no. Mr. Warner.
So what did Mr. Sanders say?
Mr. Warner, no. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Whitehouse, no. Ms. Hassan. Ms. Hassan, no. Ms. Cortez Masto. Ms. Cortez Masto, no. Ms. Warren. No. Ms. Warren, no. Mr. Sanders. No. Mr. Sanders, no. Ms. Smith. No.
Bernie Sanders just said no. Bernie Sanders just said no to his buddy, longtime buddy, Bobby Kennedy. All the Democrats are saying no to a Democrat that Trump nominated, who they all have known well for many years, and they know better. They know better. Holy freaking smokes. Bernie Sanders, corruption galore. Billboard. I would venture to say that probably half of Bernie Sanders' base, cult following base, is a huge advocate for Bobby Kennedy.
Ms. Smith, no. Mr. Lujan? No. Mr. Lujan, no. Mr. Warnock?
No.
Mr. Warnock, no. Mr. Welch? No. Mr. Welch, no. Mr. Chairman? Chairman votes aye. Mr. Chairman, the final tally is 14 ayes, 13 nays.
That's 14 nines, 13 nays. Like, yes.
The vote was, would the clerk please restate the vote?
Mr. Chairman, the final tally was 14 ayes, 13 nays.
The vote was 14-13. The nomination is reported favorably. We will now turn to other senators who would like to make a statement. Since I asked my Republican colleagues to hold off at the outset, I'll go to the Republican side next. First, Senator Tillis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I voted aye today, and I want to just briefly explain why. I believe in my 65 years, I'll be 65 in August, that Mr. Kennedy will be one of the first people coming before who is, in fact, not a trained healthcare expert. He views this through the lens of an attorney. He's brought many lawsuits on food safety, vaccine safety, a number of other things. But, Mr. Chair, I think it was Senator Warnock that said that the president said he was going to go wild in the Department of Health and Human Services. I hope he does. I hope he goes wild and actually finds a way to reduce the cost of health care. I hope he goes wild, and instead of having the discussions that we have had for the 10 years that I've been in the Senate of making Medicaid work and making people on Medicaid healthier, I hope he goes wild and figures out how to do it, because the status quo has not achieved much in the way of gain. I hope he goes wild on food safety discussions so that we can actually improve our food safety supply. I hope he goes wild on the healthcare supply chains and, in fact, tries to make sure that drug prices go down instead of bludgeoning pharmaceutical companies, get everybody in the room and make sure that we do this right. Reduce the cost of bringing a vaccine to market, reduce the cost of bringing drugs and therapeutics to market, look at the full supply chain, and somebody with a legal mind may do that. He is no health professional. In fact, he's the first, I believe, and since I've been alive, who's not been a healthcare professional in a scientific sense, but he is a professional in terms of carrying this forward and holding people accountable through the courts. But and also, Mr. Chair, I'm not going to go much longer. But I had a lot of people call me earlier. I had people from the agriculture industry call me and express concerns. But I'm not aware of any organized, credible group, the Farm Bureau, the Department of Ag Commissioners, or others, who have said that we should vote against Mr. Kennedy. I heard people express their concerns about his pro-choice position. And yet I haven't seen any pro-life organization score this vote or recommend that we should vote against it. I heard him call the NRA a terrorist organization. And yet the NRA is silent on his confirmation. And so I've heard him say that GMOs are a concern. Hopefully we can convince him that not all GMOs are. It's feeding the world corn, drought-resistant strains of health.
Did Bobby Kennedy actually call the NRA a terrorist organization? Did he actually say that? I mean, he's a Democrat, and all his fellow Democrats just voted against him. WTF, people, wake up.
Healthy vegetables will move on. Protein producers were mad about lawsuits were brought against them, but there's been no organized opposition against them. And so maybe it is time to have a different kind of disruptor there. The only way that the only way that Bobby Kennedy and I will get crosswise is if he does actually take a position against the safety of proven vaccines. That will be a problem for me. He answered a very important question to me during the hearing.
Look at this. Even these guys, like all these guys are bought and owned by these vaccines. That's, oh my gosh.
I asked him specifically if it was his intent to let the scientists of the CDC, the NIH, BARDA, and other organizations to work independently. He said to me under oath that he would. If he fails to do that, that will be a concern for me and something I'll bring up in a future oversight hearing. But Mr. Chair.
That's a concern, to let scientists work independently? Oh my God. We don't want doctors and scientists to show us their independent science. We don't want anything to say no to our precious vaccines. It's the science is final. Nope. Sorry, that shit's not going to work, but at least he voted yes. So I'm not going to harp on him too much here.
We have not made appreciable progress in Medicaid and improving the health of the population on Medicaid. We have a SNAP program that does have too much sugar and things that are eligible in that program that should be eliminated to make these people who are on free and reduced lunch healthier. We need to stop having full trash cans in public school cafeterias full of stuff that the kids aren't eating and figure out how those kids on free and reduced lunch actually have a healthier lifestyle. And so I, for one, think that it is time to put a disruptor in. It is time to put somebody in there that's going to go wild. But there are areas where I think that's exactly what we need. And there are areas of health and human services that if you touch the gold standard for the NIH and the CDC, then I'll have a problem with that nominee, and we'll bring that up during oversight. But it was for those reasons. And
the gold standard of the CDC, is that what the American people think? Really? It's not really golden standard as we've gone over. And again, I don't know shit about vaccines. So what do I know about vaccines? That's not the issue. The issue that everybody's saying everywhere, except these bought out and owned politicians, is that here's what science does. You check and cross-check and test and verify and retest. Science is up for scrutiny. Science doesn't try and stop other people from testing it. That's anti-science. That's the only issue. We let doctors have discourse. We let scientists have discourse. We talk through this. We let them hash it out. We let them test the science. Anyone who doesn't promote that is literally anti-science. Straight up. All right.
the fact is that there's not a single organization that I consider to be credible in this space, in agriculture, in Second Amendment, or in pro-life, who have openly objected and scored this vote. I believe that silence is consent. And the fact that they haven't suggests to me that folks that I'm instructed by are okay with this nomination. And for those reasons, I voted for Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Senator Tillis. Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we had our hearing last week, Mr. Kennedy has amended his ethics agreement. Recall that his ethics agreement said that while he was Secretary of HHS.
I mean, just look at her. I just can't. This crazy lunatic. For the love of God. What is she? Massachusetts? For the love of God, would you dumbasses out there in Massachusetts stop continuously reelecting these absolute to the core shady, corrupt politicians? All right, guys, brace yourselves. We're going to suffer our way through this insufferable human being here. Here we go.
As he intended to retain a financial interest in ongoing vaccine litigation that he was already collecting money from, and that he wanted to continue to collect that money, even though he could affect the outcome of that litigation. Now, he has since changed his.
Okay, that's actually a lie. He said while he's in office, he won't, but afterwards. And he also said, sorry, Miss Warren, who's bought out by the vaccine companies. All right. Clearly, we've got the data. You can't censor it. Thanks to X, thanks to Elon, you can't censor the actual truth from coming out. Miss Warren, there, that you are bought and owned by the pharmaceutical companies, the vaccine companies. Yep. And so it takes one to know one here, right? Okay.
Position on that. He, once this has been exposed and people have talked about it and have some pretty serious reservations about his doing that, he has said that he will instead give his financial interest to his son. That is a fig leaf that is so small, it would take a magnifying glass to see it. No one is fooled about what's happening here. Mr. Kennedy.
Yep, no one's fooled about what's happening here. That's right. Mr. Kennedy said he's not going to not sue the vaccine. Literally, this insufferable woman wanted Kennedy to promise that no vaccine companies will be sued, no accountability for the vaccine companies. That's literally what she asked.
Refuses to say that he will not participate in these lawsuits financially the day after he leaves office. And yet, Mr. Kennedy has acknowledged, first, that the American people have a right to know that the decisions you're making are decisions that are in their interest, not in your future financial.
That is so well said, right? The American citizens have the right to know that the decisions being made are in our interest, right? And not the shady politicians' interest. And Bobby Kennedy isn't, by the way, a politician. You are. Hello?
Interest. He is
that's why we've got Doge, who's looking into your corruption and all the bullshit that the money that the government spent. You know, I think the American people want to see that, right?
Said he thinks that's the right standard, and yet he has figured out how to make money off his anti-vax positions. He's already raked in $2.5 million. He is in a position where he can affect the outcomes by things he does as Secretary of HHS, and yet he refuses to say that he will delay by even a day taking on anti-vax lawsuits the minute he leaves.
That is an appalling conflict of interest. And it's one in which the American people can reasonably ask, is Mr. Kennedy's plan to help the American people, or is he planning to use this job to further enrich himself, and he's pointed out with his son, and enrich his family? The importance of this litigation cannot be overstated. This is not only about a private company that gets sued and has to pay out. Vaccine manufacturers often operate on very slim profit margins. If they get sued repeatedly and successfully, they simply move out of the vaccine space. We've already seen this happen with vaccines in the past. 20 years ago, we watched vaccines just move away if they did not have protection from these kinds of lawsuits. The consequence of Mr. Kennedy's ability to make those lawsuits easier is also the ability to shut down access and manufacturing for vaccines for every one of us. And I think that's a terrible mistake.
Thank you. Senator Welch, did you wish to speak?
I did. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, and thank you, Mr. Ranking Member, for your statement. I want a disruptor in the healthcare system and one leading it. I don't want a destroyer. And there's three issues before any nominee that we have to consider. One is character, another is competence, and the third is priorities. We did not have Carolyn Kennedy here, but she gave a statement. And she said that Bobby was able to attract people through the strength of his personality, his willingness to take risk and break the rules. And those might be desirable qualities if it was accompanied by sober judgment and behavior, because the person who leads a major organization has to have the confidence of the people that work for him. And frankly, some of the things that he did that never explained, a chainsaw taken off the head of a whale, dumping a bear in Central Park for his own amusement. These are just weird things. And we never really got into the character issue of what is required for a person who runs such a major department. The competence question.
Yeah, maybe you could have asked these questions during the Senate hearing instead of talking about whatever bullshit you guys tried to talk about. Like, what are you talking about?
This is all on a wing and a prayer and a hope. There's no record of Mr. Kennedy having experience in managing a large organization in medicine, no experience with science, and none of the prior experiences required not only to run a major organization, Health and Human Services, but also the CDC, the NIH, and all the other organizations that are under the umbrella of healthcare. And by the way, on the competence issue, let's be candid. This was a deal where Mr. Kennedy was running for president as a Democrat. He lost, and he approached President Trump to make a deal. And for political reasons, the deal was made. And the appointment was going to be that he's Health and Human Services. The president has a right to make that deal. Mr. Kennedy can seek it, but it doesn't translate into competence. And the third is priorities. The priority for Mr. Kennedy is about the vaccines and his theory of that. And we need reliable vaccines and not a conspiracy theorist on that. But you know, the healthcare system is not working for the American people. It is it's too costly. Our employers who care deeply about providing employer-sponsored healthcare can't afford these premiums. The folks,
again, these guys just try and stop science. All these guys, yeah, for real. All these guys come in and are literally the opposite. It's the opposite of what they're saying. They're anti-science. They don't want to be tested. They don't want their science to be tested. They don't want their science to be looked at. That's all Bobby Kennedy's saying. That's all he's saying. That's all the host of everybody that has concerns is saying. We want actual, authentic, real science, and we want scientists and doctors not to be censored, not to have their licenses revoked by a cabal of doctors who say the science is final. That's what the American people want. That's the issues, and they're not even speaking to it at all. Nothing to see there. They just are. It's such a clear truth serum for these senators on their corruption. One that's not corrupt, one that's not bought out by the vaccine companies, okay, are perfectly okay with Bobby Kennedy. But the ones who have shit to hide, because Bobby Kennedy is just going to let the science play out. He's going to let the oligarchy of doctor organizations and vaccine companies to be tested, to be put to the test. Hello? That's right. That's right.
Who are getting their insurance on their own can't afford it.
That's right. GF Burke, let's go. Kong.
Even Obamacare is getting so expensive because the prices are escalating constantly with pharma expenses, with the providers having it, with private equity getting into healthcare. Mr. Kennedy's priority was about his view of vaccines. It was not about making healthcare more affordable and accessible. And in response to really a very direct and easy open-ended question from Senator Cassidy, Mr. Kennedy showed a woeful ignorance, even between the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. So we have a healthcare system that is not serving, as it should, the interest of American citizens, of American businesses, and American taxpayers. And I, after this hearing, did not have confidence that Mr. Kennedy would be the one to lead us to a better future. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Welch. That concludes the remarks that senators have requested to make, and hearing nothing further, I'd like to thank all of our members for attending. This Finance Committee stands adjourned.
Okay, so there's more coming. All right, let's catch up. Okay, here we are.
Where we're prepared for the vote.
The vote is coming. So what was that vote even about? I don't know. He was favored 14 to 13 votes in whatever that committee was. Okay.
We are meeting today to consider the nomination of Robbert F Kennedy Jr. to be Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. We are still waiting to get all of our members here, and while we wait for that to occur, we will proceed with statements. And I will proceed first, then Senator Wyden, and then we will rotate from one side to the other until we are at a point where we're prepared for the vote. Is that fit with you, Senator Wyden? Mr. Kennedy, if confirmed, will have the opportunity to deliver much-needed change to our nation's healthcare system. He has spent his career fighting to end America's chronic illness epidemic and has been a leading advocate for healthcare transparency, both for patients and for taxpayers. Mr. Kennedy has also clearly responded to our questions during the rigorous due diligence process in his hearing also, and in the course of answering over 900 questions for the record that were asked by members of this committee. In response to members of the committee, Mr. Kennedy has even amended his ethics agreement going beyond what is required by the Government Office of Ethics. Mr. Kennedy has proven his commitment to the role of Secretary of the HHS, and I will vote in favor of his nomination. I strongly encourage my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to do the same. And with that, I recognize our ranking member, Senator Wyden, for his remarks.
Thank God we finally had our first senator that wasn't like, oh my God, don't question the vaccines. Don't question the science. Don't question it. Oh, just listen to that statement. That is anti-science to say that, by the way. We had one so far that hasn't said that. Thank God.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll have a brief statement, and then several of my colleagues on our side are also going to make brief statements. This morning, we're going to vote on Robbert Kennedy's nomination to serve as our nation's chief healthcare officer.
We have the black-eyed man here. All right, we know what this guy is going to do. This guy is like seriously demon-possessed or something. It's just weird as heck.
Sir, before we get to Mr. Kennedy, and why I believe he is singularly unfit to serve as HHS Secretary, I'd like to say this. The last several days we've witnessed an authoritarian takeover of our federal government by Elon Musk and Donald Trump.
Here we
They
go.
set their sights on a full purge of anyone in government that doesn't bend the knee and follow their orders.
Nope. He's just trying to audit, where our tax money's going, and he is uncovering endless corruption. So listen how they spin this. These evil, lying SOBs. The spin is blowing my mind. Corruption to the core here. This guy, who the hell is Mr. Wyden? We got to get him the hell out of here.
They've taken over the Treasury Department's payment system. And colleagues,
Yeah, you mean the government has relieved other government people of their duties? Actually, no. They didn't have to relieve him. He resigned after going 22 years and not denying one single payment, even to terrorist organizations. Our government was sending money to the literal cartels. All right, they've uncovered that. And listen to how the garbage they spin this. Thank God for Elon Musk doing his job, and then making it public for all of us to see so it can't be covered up. Yeah. Wow, what a novel idea, guys. We can actually look at what our government is actually spending our money on, our tax money on. Hello?
has a direct effect on major programs within our committee's jurisdiction that include Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. For example, this committee voted for a major reform of pharmacy benefit manager legislation. We passed it 26-0, but Trump and Musk killed it. Think what they could do with abuse.
Yeah, he didn't kill it, by the way. He paused all Treasury payments except Social Security and a whole bunch of other things. Yep. So that was a lie. I mean, can these guys say one thing that's actually truthful? Are they capable of saying one truthful thing?
Of the payment system. Now, in my view, much of this is of dubious legality and constitutional authority, and certainly flies in face of congressional responsibilities. I'll wrap up on this point by saying I hope our colleagues on the other side of the aisle will not sit by while Musk and Trump make a mockery of the power Republicans hold in their congressional majority.
Hey, guess what, Mr. Wyden? $1.3 trillion got lost in our treasury. Nothing to see. Like, we don't need to look into this. We don't need to look into your $1,200 or $1,300 coffee cups that you get. They spend $1,280 per coffee cup. Nah, nothing to look at here. We don't need to look at the fact that we're about to send $50 million to Hamas for condoms. Nothing to look at there. Yeah, that's right. Absolutely nothing, Kong, right? Right.
Now more than ever, the American people need leaders that will stand up to these abuses. That brings me to Mr. Kennedy. A recent analysis.
These abuses, guys, we're being terrorized. We're being terrorized by Elon Musk. No, he's just kind of looking at and exposing to the world what y'all are doing with your money, with our money, I should say, our tax dollars. Yeah.
This showed that Mr. Kennedy has made 114 separate appearances in just the last 4 years where he has espoused anti-vaccine views or spread information.
Yep. Yeah, thanks. Because you know what? There's like tens of thousands of doctors that also spread their quote unquote misinformation of concerns for vaccines. Just to be clear, no, not a whole lot of people are actually saying they're anti-vaccine. Okay, so that's also false. He's not saying anti-vaccine. What he's saying is we just need the scientists to look at the vaccines. We need to make vaccines great again. That's what he's actually saying, because of the shit that we keep finding in the vaccines. Hello. But hey, no, don't test the science. Don't test the science. Literally, that statement is an oxymoron. It's literally an oxymoron. Science in its very core and root and definition is you test and reaffirm, test and confirm. It's always subject to scrutiny. It's always subject to testing. Okay.
Information about the efficacy of vaccines. Misinformation, specifically. In 36 of those instances, Mr. Kennedy directly linked vaccines to autism. Last week, Mr. Kennedy was given ample authority on a bipartisan basis.
Why do you guys think that Mr. Kennedy directly linked vaccines to autism? Why do you think he would maybe say that? Oh, you mean it's because there's tens of thousands of doctors and scientists that say that? Could that maybe be why? Oh, so wait, the science isn't final? You mean we got to test the science? We got to science has to hold up to scrutiny? No.
Basis to recant his decades-long career peddling anti-vaccine conspiracies. Instead, he spent his time with us dodging and weaving and gave no indication that if confirmed.
Dumbass American public, alert, dumbass American public. This is what you've been voting for. These corrupt politicians. I hope it's crystal clear. I hope there's more and more and more people opening their eyes and waking up to what is going on within our own government. The absolute epitome of corruption in politics. All right. Is this garbage? Anyone, again, we're taking names, bitches. Anyone who votes against RFK, we got to get him the hell out of here. And that goes for Tulsi Gabbard. Okay. If you're a Democrat, at least, because hello.
As HHS secretary, he would stand by the long settled science surrounding routine vaccination.
The long settled science. It's settled. Let's just ignore like 60% of moms that disagree with that. By the way, let's just ignore. I wonder what the actual percentage of scientists and doctors would call it long settled. I would venture to say, I'm just going out on a limb here, that 50% or more of scientists and doctors would literally say that it's not settled at all whatsoever. Zero. Unequivocally.
Just take the Samoa measles outbreak as an example. Mr. Kennedy told me, and I quote, we don't know what was killing them, speaking about the 83 measles deaths during an outbreak of the disease in 2019. Just yesterday, colleagues, the director...
Hey, the 83 measles, I'm pretty sure this is the same case. Hey, here's one thing we just forgot to mention here. Those 83 measles cases are from illegal, undocumented aliens who were not legally here in our country. That might be an important detail that we should mention here. Oh, okay.
General of Health from Samoa called this claim a total fabrication. Peddling these conspiracy theories as the nation's chief health officer is going to be deadly for kids across the country. On abortion, Mr. Kennedy's answers once again raise still more questions.
Hey, don't question, parents. Don't you question? It's going to be deadly if your children don't get vaccines. In fact, I move people with all these different strands that like 8,000 strands of flu means here's what we need. 8,000 different flu vaccines. So here's what we're going to start doing at our schools for protection. We got to protect our kids. We're going to put doctor's office we're going to have a morning vaccine and a bye-bye go home vaccine every day at the schools, guys. That's literally what these people are going to be pushing someday. I mean, that's the lunacy. That's literally and they're going to spin it as they're protecting the American children. Like, that's the lunacy of these people.
He refused to tell us whether he would blindly follow a directive from Donald Trump to break the law and end access to mifepristone. And he seemed to have no understanding of his role in enforcing existing federal laws that guarantee women the right to life-saving abortion care. Mr. Kennedy also failed on several occasions to show a basic understanding of the Medicare and Medicaid programs he would be tasked with overseeing. Colleagues, that alone should be disqualifying. Mr. Kennedy has given us no reason to believe he'll be anything other than a rubber stamp for plans to gut Medicaid and rip healthcare away from the American people, and be a yes man if ordered by Musk or Trump to take an illegal action.
Lies,
I close with this, colleagues.
And more lies.
Today, we're going to make a judgment about the future of science in this country. We're going to make decisions that are going to impact the health and well-being of Americans for years to come. I agree, and I say this to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, that the healthcare status quo needs substantial changes so we get better, more affordable care to patients. And that leaves, given my statement, the question in front of us now that's pretty simple. Do senators want their legacy to include disregarding basic health science and instead elevate conspiracy theorists? Making Robert Kennedy Secretary of Health and Human Services, in my view, colleagues, would be a grave threat to the health of the American people. And I urge my colleagues this morning to vote no.
We got to get out of here.
Yeah, we're going to do it.
Get out
So
of
Senator Wyden, we have all of our members here. Senator Wyden and I have agreed that we will have 2 or 3 on each side who wanted to make statements. Do so before the vote. So please, everyone, hold with us while we have those statements made, and then we will proceed to the vote. I know we've got a lot of folks here pushing on some. Do you want to vote now?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman, I've got several colleagues who were under the impression after we talked that we would have 2 or 3, and I'm happy for both sides to make brief remarks, and I'd still like to stay with that.
I did make that commitment. And so I could say to my colleagues on my side, I would appreciate it if you would hold your remarks until after the vote. We will let a couple on your side have their remarks, and then we will proceed to the vote.
Great, thank you.
And who would be next?
Senator Campbell.
Senator Campbell.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I didn't, when you said 2 or 3 people, I didn't know who you had in mind, but being next in seniority, I appreciate the opportunity. Today is very concerning to me because of the future of what I think our nation faces. When I think of this issue, I think of my Pacific Northwest leadership, how Paul Allen, on his own, invested $100 million to fight Ebola. I think of Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation, not just trying to eradicate polio and work on these issues, but to think of a regime that helps not just our nation's health, but global health. So with the UW, the University of
Did she just call out Bill Gates as doing good shit with vaccines? Oh, okay, guys. We're further behind than I realized. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to up this to 1.75x speed so we can get through it. All right. Here we go. What the hell? These people are insane.
Washington, the Cancer Research Center, all of these entities are a collaboration of saying we have to go faster in solving these threats to our nation as it relates to health. Now, we can have a big discussion, which I think you guys all want to have a big discussion about whether and when what happened in the Wuhan province. But I can tell you, we were the first city. We had the first patient. We had the first people who died in nursing homes. We had an emergency room at a hospital who basically was just begging for any equipment we could get them. The whole community stood up and moved as fast as we possibly could and broke down barriers to save lives. And that is what we have to continue to do on innovation. We cannot let another country get ahead of us on some sort of warfare issue and not have a response when it comes to a vaccine. So the most challenging, I wanted to vote for Mr. Kennedy in the context of my family's history. My dad stood behind his father the night his father gave the famous speech. I told him in my office, in my family, the Kennedys stood up. But when he answered Senator Cassidy's question, and he couldn't even give him the answer that, yes, the data is there to support vaccines today. I don't need any more data. All of a sudden, I saw this world that we got affected by in Seattle not being stood up for. I need someone at HHS who is going to say we're going to be a leader in medical technology, science, vaccines. We are going to fight foreign powers. We are going to be there to provide global health. And I don't want a recalcitrant. I need a leader. And that is why I'm voting no.
Thank you. Senator Wyden and I have agreed that Senator Warnock will now.
So did she literally just say she doesn't want to see the data, like any more data? We have enough data. Nothing to see here. We don't want to test the science, which is literally anti-science. We have all the data we need. The science is final. Holy smokes, dude.
Now speak. Following Senator Warnock, we will proceed to the vote, and then anyone else who wants to make remarks will be allowed to make remarks. Senator Warnock.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Chairman. At a rally a few months ago, Donald Trump said that he was going to allow Mr. Robbert Kennedy to, quote, go wild on health. Go wild. Of all the things that I can think of,
Wait,
I'd like to say.
We already saw this. We already saw this. What? We saw that.
Global health. So with the UW, the University of Washington, the Cancer Research Center, all of these.
What is going on? It was weird. Okay, literally already saw all of this.
And he couldn't even give him the answer that, yes, the data is there to support vaccines today. I don't need any more data. All of a sudden, I saw this world that we got affected by in Seattle not being stood up for. I need someone at HHS who is going to say we're going to be a leader in medical technology, science, vaccines. We are going to fight foreign powers. We are going to be there to provide global health. And I don't want a recalcitrant. I need a leader. And that is why I'm voting no.
Thank you. Senator Wyden and I have agreed that Senator Warnock will now speak. Following Senator Warnock, we will proceed to the vote, and then anyone else who wants to make remarks will be allowed to make remarks.
It's just playing that on a loop.
Questions for the record that were asked by members of this committee. In response to members of the committee, Mr. Kennedy has even amended his ethics agreement, going beyond what is required by the Government Office of Ethics. Mr. Kennedy has proven his commitment to the role of Secretary. Senator, Mr. And then we will rotate from one side to the other until we are at a point where we're prepared for the vote. Does that fit with you, Senator?
So is this?
Mr. Kennedy, if confirmed, will have the opportunity to deliver much needed change to our nation's healthcare system. He has spent his career fighting to end America's chronic illness epidemic.
Okay, we've already seen all this. This is nuts.
To help the American people, or is he planning to use this job to further enrich himself? And he's pointed out with his.
Huh. So I guess the vote, which he passed 14-13, is to move on to the full Senate vote. So has it not happened yet? What's going on? Let's catch up with some Benny here. So I saw Benny was showing this. This is the very guy that I wanted to show you guys. So I'm also going to play this at 1.75x speed. Okay. So it ended an hour ago. I saw that, but I thought he was going to the full Senate vote. So has that not yet happened? What's going on? Tell me, Zan. All right. Okay.
This is called offense, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh.
Our entire lives on defense as a Republican Party. No.
The real vote's not scheduled yet. I didn't know that. What the heck? I thought we were going to know if he gets in or yay or nay. Okay. All right. So this guy, we were talking about the U.S. aid last night. This is awesome. This is the dude right here.
So what is USAID? When people hear the name USAID, they focus on aid. They focus on thinking like it's humanitarian work. But aid is not actually in the name of USAID. USAID stands for the United States Agency for International Development, not aid. It's not a charity. And international development is simply capacity building. It is local and regional capacity building done across the whole world, i.e. internationally. The primal id in USAID, international development, is about capacity building of assets that can be used by either the Pentagon, the State Department, or the CIA for their own activities. So if you're the Secretary of State and you were asked by the National Security Council or the President to do something in a different country or through other government, stop the passage of a bill in a foreign country's legislature. How would you do that? And the first thing that I said is you would look at the assets that already exist in the country. Do we need new assets in addition to the ones that we currently have, or are the existing assets, can they achieve this simply by giving them enough money, giving them enough resources, giving them enough training, giving them enough support? One of the main ways that capacity building would be financed would be through USAID. USAID would say that it's doing something, funding a hospital system, funding universities, funding civil society organizations, funding media institutions, funding independent media in the region. Sorry, it's something in my eye. Independent media in the region on USAID payroll. And those institutions, those assets would then be bigger and more powerful and more capable capacity, more capable of serving the State Department's goal, aka advancing U.S. national interests. USAID has a bigger budget than the State Department, over $50 billion. It is a bigger budget than the CIA. The entire intelligence community only has about 72 billion. So that's the CIA plus the 16 others.
And look at these bullshit, evil senators. And we've had all these senators trying to not have nothing to look at here. We don't, hey, USAID? What? The terrorist, Elon Musk, is looking into how we're spending our government dollars. We can't have that. We can't have that, guys. The insane spin from these evil, lunatic, freaking politicians who somehow the dumbass American public will listen to like freaking zombies, like a moth straight to the flame, and just actually buy into their crap. They don't want for us to look into how we spend our money. They don't want for us to look at how USAID, which is a criminal organization, spends its tens of billions of dollars. Nothing to see here.
USAID has a bigger budget than the CIA and is almost the size of the entire intelligence community combined. That is how important USAID is to American statecraft. It is an intelligence community, a State Department, and a Pentagon assistance organization rolled into one. I just copied this from the USAID website. USAID carries out U.S. foreign policy, advances U.S. national interests by promoting broad-scale human progress. At the same time, it expands stable, free societies, creates markets, and trade partners for the United States, and fosters goodwill abroad. The operative phrases here are carries out U.S. foreign policy. This is not charity work. This is not aid. This is cynical, self-serving purposes. And what is it seeking to do? Free societies, open societies. Why does USAID want other countries to be open societies? Because that's how you get the influence in. If a country is a closed society, they're closed off from USAID influence. We cannot capacity build our assets there. Closed societies box USAID out. China is a closed society. That is why we have not been able to topple the government of China, despite having tried for 100 years now almost. We have not been able to topple Putin from Russia. Why? Because Russia is a closed society. Like China, they kicked USAID out. It is not an open society. And so the USAID can't just take over their entire media ecosystem by funding 100 different media propaganda outlets in the region to sway hearts and minds. And remember, that's what this is. It's hearts and minds and cash. That's what soft power is. They call it hearts and minds work, but it's cash that does the moving of those hearts and minds, especially of the leaders of the movements.
Well said. Rough globalist. I love it. USAID.
We really did have everything, didn't we? I mean, when you think about it.
What difference at this point does it make?
Let's go, Benny.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, a very interesting show and a very interesting time for this country. We've been doing a little bit of research, something we're going to be doing a lot more of here on this program, something that we feel is very much our obligation to you, to help in the exposing of the world crumbling right now, an entire world, a country that you don't even recognize, a country that was flipped against its own founding and against its own people, infrastructures and systems that are on their dying gasps and just need a little push over the cliff edge to be fully exposed at scale. The outrage from the American public over USAID will be fully exposed on this program. The sick funding of left-wing propaganda groups and the largest criminal fraud in human history will be laid bare for you today, ladies and gentlemen. Tuesday, February 4th, 2025. USAID is dead. We're going to explain to you why it needed to die, ladies and gentlemen. And now you will understand exactly the depths of the totality, the fifth column that was operating a government wholly and totally outside of your control here in this democracy. What we have found is going to make your skin crawl. It's going to send a shiver down your spine. We're going to show you things you've never seen before on this program. We're going to be joined by Mike Benz, the world's foremost expert on this subject. And the man who's done so much of the exposing himself will bring you new bombshell revelations here. Did you know Let me just tease this out. Did you know that your own tax dollars were used for the potential destruction and assassination of President Trump? Did you know that you funded it? Did you know that you funded the attempts to put President Trump in prison for 471 years? And that the assassin's bullet that pierced Trump's ear may well have direct connections to our federal government. And you wonder why these screaming demons don't want us to talk about this.
That's right. Well said, Benny. That's exactly right. USAID paid 10 different journalists. It was either, I think, $30 million to literally, their purpose was to write hit pieces against Trump and then collude with the CIA and FBI. Hello? Wake up, people.
You wonder why all of DC, all Democrats have found one cause to rally around, and that is the salvation of USAID. I look forward to the marches in order to save the CIA soon from the left. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Benny Johnson, and this is The Benny Show. I want to begin this program by just telling you, ladies and gentlemen, about the way that we preserve our wealth on this show. We know that we live in tumultuous times, and that gold is a safe harbor. It is a safe harbor for me. It is something that I use personally in order to make sure that I diversify in times that seem quite inflationary, actually. We're going to talk about an enormous amount of government spending that is totally and completely fraudulent. Remember, for every dollar that the government prints, it lowers the value of your wealth. So, ladies and gentlemen, the government can't print gold. That's why you should invest with gold. My friends can. Because I want to give the floor to Mike Benz. And we have so much to get to here. It's like impossible to carve up this whale carcass, right? You ever seen the whale carcass at the bottom of the ocean? And like, it's so big, like it's such a feast. Ladies and gentlemen, there's so many rib bones here to get to.
Let's go.
But I want to begin by establishing what USAID is and is not. USAID, you would assume, stands for aid. Like we're giving humanitarian aid. Isn't this the people who give tents and loaves of bread to starving children in Africa? And the answer is absolutely not. Not only that, the aid doesn't even stand for aid. It stands for international development.
What
does that mean? Well, whenever there is a term like international development from the U.S. state and statecraft departments, you know what that really stands for. It stands for leverage. Leverage of our American taxpayer dollars over another country to meddle in those countries and to project the official policies of the State Department. And what are the official policies of the State Department been for the last, I don't know, my entire life? The official policy of the State Department has been left-wing statecraft, globalism, a wholly unified government, unelected, and outside of the reins of the American taxpayer and the American public. And the perfect distillation of that here is USAID, the single largest criminal fraud operation in human history. Our research over the past 24 hours.
Okay, I'm going to go back to 1.5x speed. Okay, this is so good, you guys. You got to hear this.
Exposed fraud that on a criminal scale will add up to the largest criminal activity ever recorded. This is why President Trump and Elon Musk shut down USAID. As of right now, the offices have been locked. The building has been completely shuttered. The websites are offline. Even the X account of USAID is gone. Here are just some things that we were able to find. In Haiti, $1.14 billion of your taxpayer money was spent on a power plant that was never built. In Cuba, an audit shows $74 million were spent on democracy promotion. Is Cuba a democracy? The funds completely vanished without any project being developed at all. In Afghanistan, millions were squandered on health scams. Hospitals absolutely never built. Nigeria, a major USAID contractor was linked to the contractors overbilling hundreds of millions of dollars lost. Never recovered. Nobody ever suffered. COVID-19 funding. USAID spent over $40 million in taxpayer money in order to pay scientists at the Wuhan laboratory to develop dangerous gain-of-function molecules, including additions of spike proteins into coronaviruses to make them transmissible to human beings. And to eventually loose COVID-19 on the earth. USAID.
They literally paid the scientists who let loose COVID. Straight up.
Has funded biolabs around the world.
We
haven't even gotten to the biolabs currently existing in Ukraine. Also funded by USAID. Remember how Hunter Biden worked on biolabs contracts in Ukraine? Guess where that money came from? A $2.5 million deal in Serbia for DEI. A $70,000 deal for an Irish DEI musical. $47,000 on transgender operas in Colombia and $32,000 on trans comic books in Peru. $20 million for an Iraqi version of Sesame Street to promote alphabet agendas.
$20 million for an Iraqi version of Sesame Street. Seriously.
Egypt and Tunisia, $56 million for tourism. Why would we be funding another country's tourism?
Jordan,
$40 million for schools. Vietnam, $11 million to fight trash burning. Central America, $27 million to deportees for gift bags. Let me say that again. We're paying tens of millions of dollars for gift bags for the people we deport. And this one's very important. That's one that I'm going to talk about with Mike Benz. Because we go on and on and on this program about Soros prosecutors. George Soros prosecutors. And, you know.
So $27 million to fund left-wing prosecutions of populist political opponents around the globe, including Donald Trump. Insane.
You know what? I'm I'm not going to apologize for that. It's true. George Soros does fund prosecutors, but not nearly as much as USAID funding a specific left-wing nonprofit specifically for the election of and the prosecution of populist candidates via left-wing prosecutors targeting Donald Trump, but not limited to Donald Trump. Populists around the world who have been prosecuted by left-wing lawfare. It is all funded, centralized, and organized by USAID. The entire censorship apparatus that we saw visited upon the entire internet was a product of USAID and an organization that had 7 former CIA heads sitting on it.
Yep.
This is the skeleton key to left-wing lawfare, censorship, persecution, prosecution, assassination, and this is key. And this is what matters the very most. This is what we will snap on this program. And this is what we are about to expose, ladies and gentlemen, with Mike Benz. What's happening here is that the vast majority of this money is not going to, for instance, $40 million in schools for Jordan, or tourism for Tunisia, or hospitals in Nigeria. This money is staying right here in America, much like the money for Ukraine. Zelensky recently did a press conference where he said, I don't know where at least $100 billion went. America sent us, according to the reports, America sent us $180 billion. We've seen 70 of that. So there's $100 billion missing. Where'd it go? Zelensky says, live on tape. You know exactly where it went. This is how the Democrat Party funds itself. You ever wonder how these large, influential Democrat groups are able to...
And make no mistake, there's plenty of corrupt Republicans as well, okay? But this, you guys, here's what's disturbing. This right here that he just mentioned isn't even like 1% of the garbage with USAID. And then there's a million more things he could have listed. And here's what's even more disturbing is that USAID is less than like 0.5% of government spending. There's tons of other organizations that are just as corrupt. Our 99, I would venture to say like 99.5% of all of our spending is total corruption. We can just cut it all out. Get it out of here. Get out of here. All these politicians, get out of here with all your corruption. Oh, and they are kicking and screaming as they're continually just getting exposed for their corruption. By Doge, by Elon, who's doing his job, who's literally doing what Donald Trump said he would do, which is simple. He's just there auditing how we spend our money as a government. Hello? And they don't want you to see that.
To mobilize all of these orcs in our streets, are able to seemingly pay for all of the protests and all of the lawfare and to sue every second of the day. They're suing a Republican. They're suing somebody. They're bringing a lawsuit against Elon Musk or Alex Jones or whoever. Donald Trump, 100 million lawsuits every second of the day. Here's Zelensky, just in case you were wondering. The entire thing's in Ukrainian, so it's just worth putting up. Here you go. Zelensky. I don't know where 100 billion of the dollars that were supposed to go to Ukraine went. Well, I'll tell you where it went. Into the coffers of left-wing groups in order to suppress our movement, a populist movement here in America. Let me unlock something for you. Nobody actually supports leftists. Yes, of course, there is a gray-haired, unhappy, super overly medicated wine mom cat lady. All right? I say wine mom. She's probably childless. Her cat's her child. She's like hopped up on SSRIs, and she believes everything that the machine tells her, okay? She believes the message. Yes, those people exist. But those people are the vast minority in this country. They wouldn't be able to put together a cohesive political movement. They wouldn't be able to stand on their own. And most of the time, they're impoverished or on welfare. They live off state subsidies. They can't astroturf a political movement. These people don't have the capacity to like properly fund these massive Antifa, BLM, Black Bloc, left-wing, lawfare movements. This stuff takes cash and money, resources, and institutional power. And ladies and gentlemen, that's what's been destroyed here. Go to the USAID.gov website, please. I want to show the people. USAID.gov. Gone. Here's from the White House, ladies and gentlemen, today.
Let's go.
Showing exactly how deep the waste runs. Again, virtually none of these projects were actually completed. None of them were built. None of them were real. What's actually happening here is money laundering. And that money goes into fighting Donald Trump and Republicans and electing Democrat prosecutors. By getting rid of these funds, and the way that these funds are hidden effectively is you say, we're building schools in Nigeria. Okay, maybe people are for that. I'm not for that at all. Not until every school in America is 100% safe and that every kid in America has a perfect and excellent education. Am I for funding schools in Nigeria? I'm not for that. But maybe some like limp-wristed people and some weak-spined people get pushed over and say, okay, yeah, maybe we should fund Nigeria. It doesn't fund schools in Nigeria. It goes to Bethesda, Maryland, into dark LLCs, into the organs of the Democrat Party, and then Democrats launder that money into left-wing agitation here in America. Give it the president of El Salvador. Nayib Bukele's tweet, please, from yesterday. I believe it's in the script. No, that's on the prison reform. By the way, we were right. I just want to let you know we were right. Yeah, we told you what was going to happen. If you were watching this program, just a little feather in the cap. If you were watching this program 2 weeks ago, we told you what was about to happen. We told you that El Salvador was about to announce that they would be allowing America to send all of their prisoners to El Salvador for a small fee.
Let's go.
I told you this, and we were 2 weeks ahead of the news cycle. This is, ladies and gentlemen, why we're thankful that you watch, and we do our job here.
Audit the
This, ladies and
FBI.
gentlemen, is our job to explain to you how this all works. From the leader of El Salvador. Most governments don't want USAID funds flowing into their countries because they understand that this money doesn't actually go to what they say it's going to go to. While marked for support of development or democracy or human rights, the majority of the funds are funneled into opposition groups, NGOs, political agendas, and destabilizing movements. At best, maybe 10% of the money reaches real projects that help people in need. There are such cases, but the rest is used to fuel dissent, finance protests, and undermine administrations that refuse to align with the globalist agenda. Cutting this so-called aid isn't just beneficial for the United States, it's beneficial for the rest of the world. This is how they were using these funds in small countries like El Salvador. They were doing the same thing here.
Yep.
This was a massive money laundering operation for the left wing to channel that cash into the election of Democrats and globalists.
Yep.
And the funding of protests against President Trump, the funding of lawfare against President Trump, and even an assassin's bullet.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Yep.
This is the scam. Why are they losing their minds about it right
Listen, that's just the tip of the iceberg. They funded Wuhan virus. They funded freaking COVID. They're literally funding the cartels in human sex trafficking and human trafficking for organs. It's like, seriously, that's already come out. It's just nuts. It's absolutely sinister. We're funding the overthrow of several other governments, and then we put in dictators that do what we want them to do, like Ukraine.
now. Why are they raging? I mean, yesterday you had an entire mob of left-wing Democrat politicians at the front of USAID in Washington, D.C., getting the B-roll, in Washington, D.C., screaming and yelling and hollering. Why this?
Yep.
Well, gives up the game. They were planning on this funding being untouched. They were expecting the systems as usual to operate with President Trump.
Yep.
And that Doge and Elon Musk would not actually be going for this aid, because who could stand against funding of schools in Nigeria, right? Shut up, limp dick Republicans. Just go along with it. We're just going to fund a school in Nigeria, right? Now, where that $50 million actually ends up is, of course, in the pockets of Democrat politicians. Here you have Ilhan Omar, Jamie Raskin,
Yep.
various other members of the Democrat Party, including Chuck Schumer, who's been mewling and bitching on about this. You've never seen anything. You've never seen them so upset. You've never seen them so enraged. This means we're over the target, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Ilhan Omar saying without USAID, I would never even be in America. Well, ladies and gentlemen. Ilhan
Get
Omar
her out of here, Minnesota. Get her out.
The 9/11 hijackers, has called for the total and complete defunding of the police in America, committed mass immigration fraud to bring her genocidal war criminal family over here. Do you believe that Ilhan Omar is somebody who is the exact product that USAID wants in Congress? I think that is a shining, glaring billboard as to why this organ must be shut down.
Yep.
And that kind of reveals the whole game here, right? Bring somebody who hates this country, a devoted Marxist, over to America, implant her into this community of weak, limp liberals, right, in Minneapolis, elect her to Congress,
Yep.
and then you've effectively stolen a seat. Then you have an apparatchik to go out to do your bidding. And this is how USAID operated.
Yep. Get her
It
out of
operated as a
here.
fifth
Come
column,
on.
wholly and totally outside of the United States government, to sabotage the actual legitimate population voting democracy of this country.
Yep.
And the reason why they're losing their effing minds over this is because they were planning on this funding going untouched, nobody ever looking into it. And they were going to use these massive pots of money to fight Trump.
Yep.
And now Trump has removed the little honeypot. This was your taxpayer dollars, of course. There are not enough left-wing billionaires in the world. This is why it was such a genius move by Donald Trump to swoop in and take over Silicon Valley, to take the money pots away from the left, and at the very least, like, have them neutralized on the sideline. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we've uncovered.
Yep.
Marco Rubio this morning stating precisely what's been going on at USAID, Rubio this morning, who is the new Secretary of State, he's now the new acting head of USAID. It hasn't been totally and completely atomized. It's just been put under his purview. Virtually everybody's been locked out of their computers. Everyone's been locked out of their office. Rubio saying this organization was acting entirely outside of the federal government. This was a globalist intelligence agency masquerading with the patina of a humanitarian agency that was undermining the will of the American people.
Yeah, so Marco Rubio's doing great. He's doing awesome. He's really doing good. But I will say this, there has been a couple questionable things going on with Marco in the past with USAID specifically. But then Marco Rubio is now saying, I was trying to hold them accountable and they wouldn't. So it's probably true. And just because somebody takes money doesn't necessarily mean they're corrupt, but it's not a good look. Same with Lindsey Graham, Mitt Romney. But what's good is that Marco Rubio is exposing it for what it is now, regardless of his past with it.
Demands of the American people. Bombshell stuff. Here we go.
You're now the head of USAID. The head of Doge, Elon Musk, called USAID a criminal organization and added that it is time for it to die. Do you agree with that?
They have basically evolved into an agency that believes that they're not even a U.S. government agency, that they are a global charity, that they take the taxpayer money and they spend it as a global charity, irrespective of whether it is in the national interest or not in the national interest. One of the most common complaints you will get if you go to embassies around the world from State Department officials and ambassadors and the like is USAID is not only not cooperative, they undermine the work that we're doing in that country. They are supporting programs that upset the host government for whom we're trying to work with on a broader scale and so forth. So they're completely unresponsive. They just don't consider that they work for the U.S. They just think they're a global entity and that their master is the globe and not the United States. And that's not what the statute says, and that's not sustainable.
Can it be reformed or does it need to die?
Well, that was always the goal, was to reform it. But now we have rank insubordination. Now we have basically an active effort where their basic attitude is we don't work for anyone. We work for ourselves. No agency of government can tell us what to do. So the president made me the acting administrator. I've delegated that power to someone who's there full time. And we're going to go through the same process at USAID as we're going through now at the State Department. I think there are this is not about getting rid of foreign aid. There are things that we do through USAID that we should continue to do. That makes sense. And we'll have to decide, is that better through the State Department or is that better through something, reformed USAID? That's the process we're working through. There are things that are happening at USAID that we should not be involved in funding or that we have a lot of questions about, but they're completely uncooperative. So we had no choice but to take dramatic steps to bring this thing under control.
Do you think that?
Yep.
This is your own Secretary of State saying this was a government outside of our government. This
Yep.
is operating not as an American institution, but as a globalist institution. To overthrow governments,
Let's go.
to censor, to kill, to destabilize.
Yep.
This was an organization undermining our actual democracy and the American people. President Trump has, in this swift manner, gutted the true heart of darkness of the enemy by taking away this funding, the screaming, the wailing, the shrieking of the corporate media and the left. You can understand the totality of the weapon that has been destroyed by President Trump that they were planning to use against him. And may I say, they did use against him for the better part of the last decade of his political life, and probably used against the American people for my entire life, the last 40 years. USAID has been used to undermine Americans, populist candidates, and to fill the coffers, line the pockets, and to astroturf left-wing causes. They have no other way to get money.
That's exactly right.
This fraud is how they were able to fund the lawfare against Donald Trump, to fund the lawfare against populist candidates around the globe, to pay for all these prosecutors, all these insane prosecutions. This was the kitty. This was the piggy bank. Very quickly here, ladies and gentlemen, from inside of USAID, here's the panic. I talked to a friend who had connections within the Democrat Party and said the level of panic for Trump and Elon shutting down USAID is unlike anything they've ever seen. By following the money, Doge has struck a killing blow to the heart of the Democrat deep state machine. Direct quote, this is worse than 9/11 for Democrats. USAID is the primary vessel they use to achieve their political agenda. USAID has always been the primary source of funding for their influence peddling schemes and interdict sources of income. Another text, based on the reactions from the party, it seems to be that dismantling USAID is Trump's biggest political victory to date. It was his enemy's golden goose. Same source told me that during the campaign, well before it was made public, Kamala's internal polling was behind Trump. So this information is good. It's rock solid. Another important addition, he says the initial plans by the Democrats is to have their people at USAID hide partisan funding under unimpeachable initiatives. Remember, schools in Nigeria, right? For little poor kids. They will push back really hard on certain line items that look reasonable, like USAID expenditures, to hide their political spending under these programs. The entire thing needs to be...
And then they hide it, and they don't want us to know where the money's actually going, which is all Elon's doing, is exposing it. They are liars. Oh my gosh.
Thrown out to avoid this from happening. Another likely solution for the Democrats is they use USAID funding to reward VIPs, NGOs as an intermediary to direct funds where they want them to go. So basically, USAID funds certain initiatives, schools in Nigeria, that look reasonable. Democrat-friendly NGO is contracted to carry out the initiative. Please go build schools in Nigeria. NGO subcontracts a VIP, Bill Clinton, with another NGO operated by a political ally, George Soros. Eventually, these funds reached the secret intended target, and the original problem is not solved. No schools were built, but all the lawfare against Donald Trump was funded. Elon Musk was sued 50 times using these funds. This means they can continue to rinse and repeat the grift. If Elon and Trump want to stick this where it really hurts, they need to completely shut down USAID, fire all of the staff. The party has instructed their allies not to make waves and to blend in.
Get them out of here.
Democrats. 97% of USAID funding went to Democrat causes. 97%. This was it. This was the skeleton key to unlocking the golden goose for how all of these black bloc agitations, lawfare, Antifa, censorship, all of these left-wing orgs, the World Economic Forum, all of it was funded. And now they're screaming. Ladies and gentlemen, before we get to Mike Benz, something very important. A report from a USAID employee about what it was like.
And listen, it's less than 1% of our federal spending. We haven't looked at NASA. We haven't looked at whatever, all these other crazy freaking FEMA. They exposed a bunch of shit with FEMA yesterday. It's absolutely insane. In real time, they're finding all kinds. Like, we will be uncovering this and unraveling this for years. It's so insane.
When Doge took over, literally the burning of the Reichstag.
Just the scandals. It's just pure scandal. It's pure evil. We developed the freaking vaccine as a bioweapon. It's all just coming out. I mean, COVID as a bioweapon. There's 63 other bioweapons being developed in universities here in the States, by the way.
They had to, they announced that Doge was in the building like the Gestapo was raiding. They were burning files. They were ripping paintings off the wall, photos, hiding flags. It's a totally and wholly corrupt government that was being run here.
Yep.
It cannot be overstated. Here we go.
But Elon Musk's influence is sweeping throughout the administration. It was late last week that the Doge team showed up at USAID offices in Washington and demanded access. USAID employee Christina Dry described the scene.
Doge was in the building. We took down our pride flags. I took out any books I felt would be incriminating. No one was talking. We heard they started taking transcripts automatically of all of our Google Meets. They unplugged the news into little kitchen galleys. It didn't feel good. And then Saturday, all of the websites went down. And then I lost complete access to my computer.
Wow, look at that. That's the quality of the activists that's currently running your federal government. They
Thank
need to rip
God.
down all of our pride flags. President Trump, very quickly on what USAID actually was. Short, sweet, and to the point.
The first term of USAID was something that you liked in some respects.
I love the concept of it. Sure. I love the concept, but they turned out to be radical left lunatics. And the concept of it is good, but it's all about the people.
Let's go.
Left-wing lunatics.
Left-wing.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's been only one man screaming out of the wilderness about this, long before anyone would listen. There's been one man who has decided to make this.
Here's our boy.
Cause de triumph, who began telling the world about USAID back when there would have been massive political, personal, financial, and professional repercussions.
And that's not true, by the way. He's not the only man. There's actually a lot of people that were, for years, have been screaming about it. I've never even heard of it, but Alex Jones apparently was, and Owen Schroyer and Harrison Smith, but this guy is the dude. He's introducing them. Here's our boy. This guy's going places for real.
And he doesn't talk about it much, but Mike Benz suffered all of those repercussions for standing against this globalist behemoth.
Yep.
The heart of darkness at the center of the deep state. That man is now completely and totally vindicated, and he's on the show live, bringing the receipts. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mike Benz.
Let's go.
Mike, you've got to be the single happiest and most vindicated man possibly to ever live on this planet. I'm proud of you, buddy. And what an incredible day.
Sure is. I'd like to say happy is the word, but it's also very heavy. And there's a weight of history, and I hope folks appreciate the historical magnitude of what's happening, and also appreciate the weight of the task of carrying this through to completion. What we're doing right now is open heart surgery on the entire structure of the American empire and the American foreign policy establishment. And it's essential that as we do this, we don't kill the patient in the process or accidentally glob on 3 arms where the heart should have been. This has to be done well. It has to be done intelligently. We do have to have this wrecking ball moment, but it's imperative that folks in Trump world at the top of our foreign policy establishment now have their eyes are open about what USAID really is, and so they can make intelligent decisions about how to actually restructure its work as they go about the process of chopping down this tree.
Okay, so let's start from the very tip top. So you went viral this weekend by exposing that USAID prosecutors, not Soros prosecutors, were the ones behind President Trump's political persecution in the courts. Can you please unpack that? Because I think that's something that's going to strike kind of at the heart of the issue here, which is that USAID was not about providing aid for starving people in Africa. It was actually about statecraft, and it was about usurping and using malign tools in order to craft the political outcomes that were desirous of a globalist regime. And the Trump prosecutions, I think, are just a perfect centerpiece for all of this. Can you unpack that to start off with, Mike?
Yes. Now, let me be clear that that money, I think that Mario tweet was well intentioned. It slightly missed the mark in the sense that the technical
tweet up. Let's get Mike's.
The technical distinction here is that the money went to the fiscal sponsor of the group controlling Soros prosecutors, and there's bleed over between the fiscal sponsor and the 501c3 project. See, Soros funds 30% now at this point. 30% of America's population lives under Soros prosecutors in all the big cities, and not only do they fund the campaigns, but they also fund the NGOs that direct the prosecutors.
30% of prosecutors in major cities are under George Soros's thumb. Seriously? Dude, that dude is villain, mega villain. Like he needs not only to be in jail, it's like death penalty. He's a straight up terrorist. Straight up.
In terms of who to prosecute, who not to prosecute, what laws to enforce and not enforce. These NGOs even write the prosecutors press release statements, social media posts, meet with them on daily and weekly bases in order to essentially, have a rent a prosecutor at their disposal to weaponize the criminal justice system. And so the main group that does that, the main Soros group that does that, is called Fair and Just Prosecutions, FJP. Now, FJP is a 501c3, but not directly. It's a project of a group called the Tide Center. The Tide Center is also the central clearinghouse for Black Lives Matter, for what it's worth.
Yeah,
you understand USAID's role in racial rental riots. That will make a lot more sense to you as to why that is. But USAID paid the Tide Center, which is, again, gives the Soros Prosecutor Control Group, it's 501c3, $27 million in one grant alone. And in that grant description, it deputizes the Tide Center to, quote, solicit concrete commitments from foreign governments. Basically, USAID goes out and pays this group to act as a shadow diplomacy to secure commitments from foreign governments to the U.S. government. So this is classic USAID stuff to control domestic politics. What they do is they fund international organizations who then turn around and use that money to manipulate domestic politics. So that's how USAID gets away with it. And they keep this firewall. They say, well, we're not funding them to do work in America. We're funding them to do work abroad. But now you've pumped them up on steroids with all this money. And now they're these big, bad, powerful organizations that simultaneously operate domestically. And this is classic stuff, but it gets a lot worse than that. I mean, USAID, first of all, is in the business of controlling prosecutors. Okay? So there's a project called the OCC. It's had a long name. You just think it is the corruption reporting project, CRP. And what USAID and people are going to.
We can't hear him. Come on, Benny, fix it. Benny, interrupt him.
Hey, Mike, your audio just clicked off. So your microphone, I don't think, is picking up correctly. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to move you into the green room. We're going to work with our producers to get your mic back up and working. Hold on just a second. Here we go.
Huh.
All right, he's just going to have to reconnect his mic. But ladies and gentlemen, this is obviously something that we're going to want to hear from Mike Benz. Here's Caroline Levitt at the White House explaining where this money was going yesterday in a bombshell clip. This is a full court press against USAID from the administration. Let's go.
You're watching live coverage.
Through USAID over the past several years, these are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either, and that's exactly what Elon Musk has been tasked by President Trump to do, to get the fraud, waste, and abuse out of our federal government. Thank you.
Yep.
And the public audience, but it was.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the White House is taking direct aim at this organization. As we fix Mike Benz's audio, we will show you exactly how many people have been listening to Mike Benz. Mike Benz has been a one-man wrecking crew against USAID. Here's Elon Musk explaining what his Doge operation is doing right now inside the building.
As we dug into USAID, it became apparent that what we have here is not an apple with a worm in it, but we have actually just a bowl of worms. And so at the point which you don't really, like, if you got an apple that's got a worm in it, maybe you can take a worm out. But
it's not a bad apple with worms in it. It's literally all it is. There's no apple. It's just a ball of worms.
You've got actually just a bowl of worms. It's hopeless. And USAID is a bowl of worms.
Mm-hmm.
There is no apple. And when there is no apple, this you've just got to basically get rid of the whole thing. That is why it's got to go. You know, it's beyond repair. So yeah.
Well,
it is a bowl of worms beyond repair, ladies and gentlemen. Some man who helped expose that bowl of worms. Joining us back again, Mike. How are we? Good.
Good. Can you hear me?
There we go. Yes. I'm so sorry. You just went completely mute right in the middle of what you were saying. Okay. So let's pop back in.
We're talking about prosecutors and media, and USAID's role in controlling both of those. I don't know when the mic evidently went mute, but I'll
the mic went mute right as you were talking about how they fund international organs. They hop them up on steroids in order to influence domestic policy in the United States.
Okay. USAID is in the business, and heavy in the business, of controlling prosecutors and controlling media. It will shock the American people the proportion of global media that is controlled by, because it's sponsored by, USAID. It will also shock the American population when they find out how many of the world's prosecutors prosecutors are effectively being manipulated or controlled by USAID. And a great example of this, because we're on the topic of how USAID's foreign money spigot is weaponized against domestic politics and domestic citizens. And crazy example of this is this group that I was beginning to mention called the OCCRP, the Corruption Reporting Project, which is the world's largest consortium of investigative journalists. These are the folks who broke the Panama Papers and a whole host of other scandals, which they conveniently only get access to because of leaked documents or hacked documents. While they're on the payroll of the CIA, they get access to the internal files of basically every enemy, enemy of the State Department's computers, which is a amazing coincidence if you think about it. But the Corruption Reporting Project gets half of its budget from USAID, and USAID gets editorial control. Effectively, they get control of hiring and firing who the Corruption Reporting Project can bring on. The Corruption Reporting Project has to submit an annual report to them before the year starts about what sort of things they're going to report on. And what they sicked them on doing was digging up dirt on Paul Manafort and his connection to Julian Assange. They wrote a false news story in order to tar President Trump and as a Russian asset and working with WikiLeaks. That was funded by USAID. Most horrendously, they targeted Rudy Giuliani. So USAID sponsored a group of hit piece journalists to dig up dirt on Rudy Giuliani, and that dirt was then used as the basis for the impeachment in 2019. It was entered into the record during the 2019 Ukraine impeachment because USAID sicked its sponsored hit piece journalists to dig up dirt on Rudy Giuliani's work in Ukraine, which they then tied to Trump in order to have him be impeached.
Don't you guys just feel awesome about where our tax dollars are going? It's just amazing. United States is such an amazing, has such an amazing, trustworthy government. Nothing to look at here, people. Nothing at all.
By Congress. So USAID was at war with Donald Trump and Trumpism and Trump's nationalist policy, both at home and abroad. And so what they did is they funded these dark arts, just in the same way the CIA was in the 20th century would pay journalists to write hit pieces. That is now done by USAID. And in fact, in the USAID report on this program, they have an accomplishment section where they list all of the people. They brag that they got 456 people arrested because of CRP's hit pieces and the flow of those hit pieces to prosecutors. That is USAID bragging in their accomplishment section about paying journalists to get 456 people arrested, to get over $1 billion of assets seized. They bragged about the return on investment, that paying these hit piece journalists $20 million netted them over $1 billion in assets seized from the targets of the hit pieces. They even bragged that these hit piece journalists that they sponsored toppled world governments. They claimed that these hit pieces got
okay, and guess where they made a lot of money? You know what came out? Alex Jones laid it out yesterday on how Alex Jones was a huge target. They targeted him illegally, and it all is leaked. Like there's actual leaked video and audio of people saying, of the head of the CIA saying they were targeting Alex Jones. And when he ran out of money, he said that straight up. He stopped targeting him because there's no more money to steal. Just straight up. Our freaking fascist Nazi government, that's where our tax dollars is funding this shit.
I think 7 different major government officials to resign, including a president and a prime minister. And they also bragged about dozens of arrests that were done that were achieved because of this. That is, hit pieces for hire in order to give prosecutors ammunition to arrest USAID's political enemies all over Central and Eastern Europe, all over Western Hemisphere, and most damningly in the United States of America itself.
So I'm listening to this, by the way, at 1.75x speed so we can get through this stuff. So I would catch up at 1.25x speed at the moment.
So you just you brought the domestic international. And this is something that I was dying to ask you, Mike. Brazil, the lawfare against Jair Bolsonaro, the lawfare in France against populist leaders, the lawfare all across Eastern Europe against populist leaders. It all seems to be happening right now in coordination. And the charges are quite similar, even in Pakistan against Imran Khan. The charges all seem to be copy and pasted.
And guess what? It's in league with the UN. It's in league with the EU. All these guys are the globalists, deep state, Illuminati, Marxist, globalist, MFers.
And they all seem to be brought at exactly the same time as, of course, populist leaders rise to power. And there is a movement around the globe for more nationality and more national defense. How coordinated is that lawfare through USAID? Is there any connection?
Benny, USAID has a concept, an internal doctrinal concept called transitional justice, which is the idea that you need to arrest people when you topple a government. When you narrowly win an election, you immediately use the criminal justice system to arrest the people from the former government. USAID has something called the Office of Transition Initiatives, which helps coordinate that. Transition means a transition from one government to the next. So literally in the process of taking over a country's government, they weaponize the criminal justice system. They pay all the groups around the prosecutors and gamify exactly how to get the prosecutors to take these steps, including through what I just mentioned, the Corruption Reporting Project, and USAID bragging that they got all these people arrested through that. They also fund the groups that lobby the prosecutors associations. For example, they did that in Brazil, USAID did. But that's not like a random one-off isolated thing they do from time to time. It's a doctrinal concept. Everyone can look this up. Go to Google and type in transitional justice. It means arrest. It means you arrest the USAID's enemies in the region. And you work with the prosecutors, you work with the media to devastate and isolate and demonize them, also to dig up dirt that can be used as the basis for criminal investigations. So the rabbit hole on this goes.
Yep. It's another amazing feat. Donald Trump literally signed an executive order. We're out of the UN. We're out of the World Health Organization. He's taken on the WEF. He's taken on the EU. Let's go.
So deep and so dark that I think a lot of people need to take a long walk and, stare wistfully on a train ride 1,000 yards away to really internalize just how much of a Truman show you have been living in with the people you think you know and the institutions you think you know really being a front for USAID.
I mean, this seems criminal. Like prima facie, that there are crimes that are right now being committed inside of USAID, and that everything from money laundering, which the Doge Group has been pretty front-facing about, $50 million to schools in Nigeria, but all the money ends up in Bethesda, Maryland. Not a single school gets built. And there's somebody that's going to be left holding the bag in that money laundering scheme. Clearly, there's no legal basis for USAID to be funding the imprisonment of populist candidates around the world who lose in very narrow, very, very suspicious elections like Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil.
I wish that were the case. I'll leave the criminal aspect of it to folks at the Justice Department and folks who specialize in criminal law. My concern is
you know what? I bet they uncovered that the USAID is a part of the rigging of the elections, including here in the United States, as we know, with endless evidence, countless hours and days and weeks and months of endless evidence of how they rigged the 2020 election, how they brought up the COVID virus, all to circumvent Trump.
Frankly, the inverse of that, which is that these are authorized crimes. In the same way that the intelligence community and the FBI are able to conduct what are called authorized crimes, that is, they have a blank check from the Justice Department. They have pre-clearance to engage in this because it's considered essential to U.S. national security or advancing U.S. national interest. For example, informants who conducting authorized crimes here in the U.S. is like $500 million from the FBI alone. Virtually everything the CIA does in terms of working with oligarchs, crooked oligarchs, working with warlords, working with paramilitaries, working with terrorist groups, involves authorized crimes. And my concern is that USAID has been operating under this cloak with the Justice Department, and their operations have been greenlit through these.
By the way, I covered this in quite a bit of detail last night. It was a good one last night.
These secular channels at Justice because they are said to advance U.S. national interests. Of course, they don't.
Maybe I will go ahead and go back to 1.5x speed, guys, because it is like an auctioneer. You're right, Christy.
Advance the interests of a very small insular crew of U.S. elites who are the same people who have sought to imprison Donald Trump and destroy any attempt to make this country great again. But the fact is, and this is I stress this point because the urge to just take everything down at USAID, I totally agree with as a first step. But what you're going to quickly find is that USAID, and I hate to say this, but they are, I begrudgingly acknowledge that they are good at their job in the sense that if their job is to take down the people that they are deputized to in order to advance U.S. national interest. That is, in order to oust foreign governments. For example, you can credit USAID with toppling the governments of Tunisia and Egypt during the Arab Spring. You can credit them with toppling the government of Brazil in 2022. You can credit them with toppling the government of Bangladesh just 4 months ago in 2024.
Guatemala, 2014.
Unbelievable. Their role in Ukraine 2014 was
their role in the human sex trafficking in Guatemala and the cartels in Mexico.
They provided the lion's share of that $5 billion that Victoria Nuland bragged about 2 months before the coup. That is, they capacity built these right sector Maidan Square student groups and protest movements. In fact, one of the things that I broke a year ago, but I put it back on X this week, was U.S. Special Forces training documents from Mark Milley and Joe Biden's tenure. This is the 2021 Special Forces vision statement prospectus, their strategic planning manual, which showed that when they organized race riots in Africa, they used USAID job fairs to provide no-show salaries to protesters so that they can go on strike and quit their jobs and still get paid because USAID is paying them the money so that they can afford to leave their factory jobs to riot in the streets against their governments. And so USAID works not just with state, but they and not just with intelligence, but they work directly with the U.S. military.
When we really dissect, I'll show a 19-minute video from him when I find it, where he's just proves it. It's proved, totally provable. He's got all the documentation, all of it. These are not just talking points. These are not conspiracies. He has endless amounts of evidence on all this. And then on top of that, we've got Doge literally tracing where the money went and how it went down.
Military. And in fact, one of these DOD reports from 2022 has a quote from a three-star general saying that he prefers to work with USAID over the State Department because, quote, USAID actually does stuff. They're the ones who are actually on the ground building the institutions that the military can work with. And so we need to do this smart. Like I said, this is open heart surgery, and Trump wants to win on foreign policy. Trump has designs for his plans in Europe. His designs for plans in Africa, where we get critical minerals. Designs for plans in Western Hemisphere and Central Asia. And what you're going to find is that these are USAID is the arm for carrying out foreign policy, but it's gone rogue But we're going to need to synchronize that with its new home at state, and that's going to be a whole other task. If I can just say one other thing, the analogy that I give here is Brexit. We all celebrated, in June 2016 when Nigel Farage pulled off that epic moment with Brexit against the full weight of world media and even the U.S. State Department trying to stop it, and the censorship and the demonization. But the fact is Brexit, as Farage himself acknowledges, did not really achieve the intended goals because of all the different layers of warfare in terms of implementing it. And you're going to find that same thing happen here. You shut down USAID and you move it to state. State just inherits a USAID herpes infection. It does not end USAID. You're going to need to manage that and do it very, very delicately.
Can we look into something in very recent history? And we talk about the lawfare against President Trump, but I would argue that the COVID-19 pandemic was the most damaging thing to ever happen to President Trump or his first term, without question, and possibly the most damaging thing to happen to the world in recent memory. $40 million from USAID through EcoHealth Alliance, directly tied to the Wuhan Virology Laboratory. But also there's more biolab funding in USAID, some having connections with Hunter Biden and Ukraine. Can you please unlock that for us, Mike? Because as you're talking about the dangers of this organization and what may still be metastasizing as herpes, as you put it, how do you shut down those programs? One, what are those programs intended to do in the first place? I'm not sure why we're funding biolabs, why that's USAID role. And then two, how do you kill that? How do you shut that down?
So one of the training exercises I would do for my ex-subscribers when we would pull up USAID grants is we would examine what the grant says and have people make a guess or determination about which role USAID is playing with the grant program. Because USAID is a switch player that toggles between assisting the State Department on foreign policy goals, the Defense Department on national security and military goals, and the Central Intelligence Agency in intelligence work. And so when you see a USAID grant, let me say this again, I've said it 1,000 times, in the past weekend alone, but there's not a single honest USAID program on God's green earth. Everything USAID does is a lie. And so when you see a USAID grant, you know it's a lie, but you don't know exactly the source of the lie. You don't know if they're lying to provide a covert operation on behalf of the State Department. You don't know if they're lying on behalf of a covert operation for DOD, or you don't know if they're lying because they're providing a covert operation as a liaison to the CIA. But you know it's one of those three. And my concern over the vaccine issues that you just mentioned, and their role in funding gain of function research, which is nominally done so that you can create a vaccine against freakazoid monster viruses, is that the CIA has played a really interesting role in vaccine diplomacy, and as has the State Department. Henry Kissinger in 2000 wrote a book talking about how American soft power has to radically upscale its role in public health interventions because they have proven successful in the 1990s to get the United States access to populations under a humanitarian cloak that we could not do under a military or diplomatic cover. And he gives examples in Yugoslavia during the Bosnia War and the breakup of Yugoslavia in 1995-99. He gives the example of Haiti. And there's about 7 or 8 countries that he mentions there. I posted all about this on X. And public health facilities and public health programs provide the perfect cover for that. And that's not my quote, by the way. That's USAID's quote. USAID in 2014 was busted running a fake HIV prevention program that served as the cover for undercover intelligence agents to recruit people to try to overthrow their government. Basically, they were operating this web of HIV prevention clinics and then getting everyone in the clinic and running resources out of this in order to create a critical component of people to take to the streets to overthrow their government. This was busted by counterintelligence, and USAID had to come clean about it. It was a massive scandal. But the question is if they were doing that with HIV prevention programs in Cuba and in other parts of Western Hemisphere, how many other public health facilities that USAID is running? How many other vaccine programs or public health programs is USAID running that are actually intelligence operations in the background? I would wager virtually every single one. And let me express another concern. And I mentioned this last night and in a few private live streams previously, but I'm going to keep banging it until someone takes note of it. There was a major scandal in 2011 where the CIA was busted running fake vaccination drives and fake vaccination clinics in Pakistan. This was a major, major diplomatic incident for the United States. Again, the CIA was collecting the biometrics of people in Pakistan under the cover of vaccination clinics and vaccination drives. And when the CIA got busted doing this, it was a major scandal. Pakistan kicked them out of the country, banned vaccine programs in the country. It took 16 months for the CIA after that scandal to write a letter, a pinky promise, non-binding, not under oath, no criminal punishments if they violate it, letter saying that they will no longer use vaccine clinics or vaccine drives as the cover for doing CIA work. Okay, 16 months of dragging them, 16 months of holding out, of reluctant, didn't want to do it, and they finally wrote a non-binding letter that they won't do it. Well, guess what? USAID is CIA, and USAID is not even under the pretense of that letter. I have a question. Hey, when the CIA in 2013 said that they're no longer going to do CIA work out of their vaccination clinics and vaccine drives, did USAID take the baton? Is USAID just doing it? And hey, guess what? Who was the top recipient of USAID funds last year? Gavi, the vaccine consortium under Bill Gates. So everything USAID is doing in this space, from funding the Wuhan lab and the CIA role in COVID. Of course, Avril Haines, who was deputy director of the CIA, you played a key role in Event 201, which was the COVID simulator where they magically knew that a bat-based coronavirus was going to come out of China, and they had a worldwide simulation sponsored by the Gates Foundation, the Johns Hopkins Biosecurity Lab, and the World Economic Forum. But what was the deputy director of the CIA doing? Coaching that whole room on the best way to censor the internet to stop conspiracy theories about man-made origins of a pending outbreak that would shut down the entire world just 2 months later. What was this? What were CIA and Pentagon front groups like the Atlantic Council and Graphica doing first to descend on the internet to censor all claims about COVID as being a man-made virus, while USAID was providing the funding in tandem with DARPA to actually create the basis for a spreadable bat-based coronavirus and the SARS-CoV-2, inferring.
Thank God for Elon Musk and free speech and the First Amendment, because never again will the American people trust our government, especially when it comes to handling misinformation and censoring speech. Nope, never again. Anytime they call something a conspiracy, it actually means it's probably true.
Cleavage cell biological basis for creating that strain. So the fact is USAID is CIA in that respect, and CIA has to manage biosecurity affairs when you're talking about these cloak and dagger things. And so it's very easy for them to weld an offensive weapon under the cloak of needing a defense against offense.
The rabbit hole does go deep, doesn't it, Mike? What are the what are some of the things that will shock people the most? Because I believe we're just at the tip of the iceberg here, and we finally reached at scale with USAID. Now it is mainstream. The White House is talking about it. The White House webpage just put up a fact sheet on USAID right now. You're seeing Democrats, of course, rally in the street to protect USAID. Glenn Greenwald saying, soon to come, the Democrat marches in favor of the CIA, right? We're seeing now the agitation be created in order to try and defend USAID. One of the Vindman brothers trying to get into the building, Ilhan Omar saying she wouldn't be in America if it weren't for USAID. Not sure if that's the single greatest advertisement for shutting it down. But here we have the final cumulus point, nexus point for Democrats to unite around. Chuck Schumer going just hollering at the wind, screaming on social media about that. This was clearly the target. This is clearly the skeleton key to unlocking the apparatus that has been funding global leftism for quite a while in this country. And so, one, what must happen next in order to stop that from happening? What would be your advice to Elon Musk and the Trump administration? And two, are we even going to see a global left-wing movement as we've known it for the last 20 years without USAID? I mean, is this it?
So I know that's a very tempting framing, and I'm not disagreeing with it. The fact is 97% of employee contributions at USAID went to Democrats. Democrats do make up the lion's share by far of grantee money. But my main concern is actually not the Democrats of the USAID story. My main concern is the Republicans. And let me explain why. So USAID is the funding arm, but the operations arm of much of USAID work is the National Endowment for Democracy, which has two sister groups that it houses, one for Democrats, one for Republicans. NDI is the National Democratic Institute, is the Democrat one. Hunter Biden was on the chairman's advisory board of that, incidentally. And IRI, the International Republican Institute, is the Republican one. And they get approximately equal funding. And much of USAID work redounds to the benefit of legacy Republican donors and stakeholders, from the energy companies to the Chamber of Commerce companies. You know, when Victoria Nuland was bragging in December 2013 about the $5 billion that USAID had flooded into Ukrainian civil society that would then later be credited with taking down the Ukrainian government and installing a Victoria Nuland handpicked new president, when she made that speech, she was standing in front of she was at a sponsored event, jointly sponsored by Exxon and Chevron. Exxon and Chevron are legacy Republican stalwarts. In fact, it was the chairman of the board of ExxonMobil who was Donald Trump's first Secretary of State before Mike Pompeo.
Legacy Republican stalwarts, the rhinos, as they call it. There's a lot of corrupt Republicans. All right. This is the whole Communist Manifesto. You destabilize, you create chaos, divide, conquer. Essentially, the globalist Marxists have owned both sides of both parties, right? And so we're trying to get the shady ones out. We gotta wake up to get these. They look good. Like a lot of these Republican Senate people, and especially the House, I think, is where there's a lot of corruption. They look all polished and presidential. But we don't care about polished and presidential anymore, people. That's a lie. That's what these BS politicians do. They come to you all polished and presidential. And they look professional. And they seem caring and sensible, or they seem like your good old country conservative type people. And then you just listen to this Louisiana senator just literally hailing the vaccine companies. That's because he's owned by them. And he seems like, you know, a straight cut, good Republican, good old school Republican guy that cares about fighting for the American people. Not when he's fighting for the vaccine companies. That's one thing. Not when he's saying the science is final. The science is fine. Nothing to look. We don't want to test the science. That's literally what they're saying. You know, that is a clear tell on who's corrupt, because that's anti-science to say that the science is final. The science is always just at the very foundation of science. It's up for being tested, test, retest, until the end of time. And that goes for anything. So that's why, for example, the science isn't concerned about fighting the effects of antibiotics, you know, or something. Because if people are saying antibiotics don't work, well, we can just prove that with science. That's so no one's worried about scientists rising up about testing the effects of antibiotics, just as an example, because they work and the science proves it, and they're not afraid of that dialogue. They're not afraid of the testing of antibiotics. Okay, but they're afraid to have the vaccines looked at because there's tens of thousands of scientists that are raising the red flags and concerned about it. And so they don't want that science tested because there's literally tens of thousands of scientists and doctors who are screaming from the rooftops, whoa, 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 on the vaccines. That's how, even though I don't know shit about vaccines, when they try and take away the First Amendment rights and just the rights of science to be tested, that's when you know that's gangster shit. That's oligarchy. That's what they did when they hung whoever, Galileo, for saying the earth is round. That's not science, people. Anytime science tries to stop questioning of science, that's when you know there's something wrong. It's a clear tell.
And so what you will, my concern, listen, if this was just a Democrat-Republican thing, there'd be no issue at all shutting this down, because a Republican-controlled House and a Republican-controlled Senate would be highly incentivized to simply shut down the agency entirely. There'd be, not only would it, redound to U.S. national interest in their view, but even in a pure, cynical, self-serving fashion, they'd shut down the money spigot for the Democrats. But you're going to find that is not going to be an easy task, because the critical component of internationalist Republicans, of blob Republicans that are on the take of U.S. aid, or their constituent, their constituent.
So the blob, he talks about this. I haven't looked into what he means by the blob, but he has a long video I saw last night before I went to bed about the blobs, like the blob Republicans taking money from organizations like USAID. And then remember that these things, it's like a web of hundreds of thousands of shell companies upon shell companies and organizations on how they hide this shit. And they do this because they don't want you to know where your money's actually going, where our tax dollars are actually, they're trying to hide it. And that's exactly what Elon Musk is doing. He's exposing the truth of where our tax money's going. There's no better function right now of what Donald Trump is doing than making it known and transparent and clear of where our tax money's going. It's literally unrooting the corruption in our government. Like, that's exactly what we nominated Trump to do. I mean, at its core, that's like 101 foundation. Don't do away with freedom of speech, and let's figure out where the corruption in our government is and root it out.
Corporations are, or their major donors are. The size of that rabbit hole, I think, will shock the American people. And my concern is those blob Republicans will form a coalition bloc with Democrats in order to stop Congress from shutting down U.S. aid. All it takes.
Mary B., what do you mean they were tested? What was tested? What's that? What are we talking about there?
There's a handful of senators in order to block that from happening. We're running into the same issue when it comes to Senate confirmation of Tulsi Gabbard and potentially other Trump nominees. But in that case, that's not doing direct damage to the economics of those senators and congressmen. USAID, shutting that down that is going to be a much harder fight. And I'm urging people, especially people who are conservative or Republican, to pay while you're watching Chuck Schumer and the Vindman brothers parade outside of USAID headquarters. I want you to pay very special attention to the Republicans who voice opposition to this, because that is going to open up a rabbit hole about the historical construction of the Republican Party, the same Republican Party that led the January 6th committee, crucifixion of Donald Trump, the Liz Cheney wing, the Adam Kinzinger wing, the Bush CIA family clan. And that is where the pressure has to be most acutely applied in terms of commitments to primary and fund the congressional opposition to them as this process plays out.
So obviously, the sabotage from the right will be the largest hurdle for President Trump, and this has been true over the last 10 years, although it seems like those hurdles are falling in pretty quick succession, especially with some of these Republicans united to support Tulsi, getting Pete Hegseth over the line. Kash Patel looks like he's cruising. What should become of USAID? It's now under Marco Rubio's purview. Marco Rubio, in a clip that we played before you came on, Mike, is saying this was a government outside of the federal government. This was not even an American organization. This was like an international globalist left-wing organization. Can USAID be saved? What would be your advice to a Marco Rubio and to an Elon Musk right now with USAID?
I just have to respond to that framing, because USAID overthrows leftist governments all the time, all the live long day. This is the problem. You have a right-wing nationalist government who does want influence over many leftist governments as well as some right-wing nationalist governments. But this idea that framing it, if that's politically useful, whatever. I defer to people; they can say their own language on this. But as someone in the background of this, trying to help provide objective guidance on this, what you're gonna find is that. A great example of this, I mentioned the overthrow of the democratically elected Bangladeshi government in September of this year. This is just 4 months ago. Sheikh Hasina, the democratically elected prime minister, was ousted in a coup that was led by the right-wing International Republican Institute at NED. Also funded by a huge flood of USAID dollars. The Republicans were funding the transgender dance festivals. The Republicans were funding the woke DEI programs. The Republicans were funding Bangladeshi rap groups in order to write rap albums to get young people and student groups to take to the streets. They weren't doing that because they were woke. They were doing that because of Republican energy company interests in the region and how it redounds to the sponsors, the Chamber of Commerce stakeholders to USAID and NED, who are significantly Republican. And so my concern is that
so just like we said on this channel, it's no longer Democrat and Republican, guys. Just let it sink in. It's not Democrat versus Republican. That is a misnomer in this era. All right. And probably forever. Always has been. I mean, for a long time. Here's what it is. Globalist, elitist, corrupt, Marxist corruption versus freedom fighters. And unfortunately, we're just not seeing very many freedom fighters on the Democrat side when it comes to politicians. As we know, it's certainly not Bernie Sanders, by the way. Okay. I mean, it's just absolutely evidence, clear as day. It's clear as day. All right. I would like to see like 1 or 2, maybe Democrats. Are they out there? All right. It's corrupt, globalist, Marxist, elitist, evil, corrupt politicians versus freedom fighters who aren't concerned about their constituents, aren't concerned about making money, aren't owned by the powers that be, but people that fight for the American people and have that vision and calling. It's a calling and vision. I'm here doing this because it's a calling. I've been resurrected. It's like, and so this is like, for me, it's just fun. It's just easy because it's a calling. It's not about, and I'd like to see that in politics. Unfortunately, it's not. Okay, wait. Yeah, Tulsi, Gabbard, RFK, and Kash Patel. We got to get these people through. Let me know if I'm missing something in the chat, guys. I thought maybe Tulsi was going today too, as well. Like, I don't know.
We've not dented this thing yet. We've dented its reputation. We've sent a massive symbolic shot across the bow in the same way that the Brexit referendum vote did. But it is going to be trench warfare, layer by layer by layer by layer. And the exact same operations may be carried out. The exact same grants can simply be grafted over from USAID's democracy, rights, and governance to USAID's democracy, rights, and labor in the blink of an eye. USAID has matching institutions for matching bureaus for State Department bureaus. These things can just be, Control C, Control V, copy pasted directly into state. And you heard Marco Rubio even refer to the fact that many of these grants should be kept to the extent that they serve U.S. national interest. But that is a very broad brush. And this is You cannot let off the gas on this for 1 second, or what looks like a triumphant moment now will go the same way that the course of Brexit did in the UK, resulting in the UK now being worse than ever under the total thumb of the UK Labour Party, who's arresting people for hitting the retweet button.
Yep, who's literally arresting people for hitting the retweet button about their children being gang raped. Like, that's how far. Rush. It has no empathy. Time for. All right, losing connection. What up? Internet? Am I attacked? My internet attacked people. Okay. All right. Mercy. Rest on our laurels, people. All right.
Yes. Nation. Okay. So retweet, Twitter. Chuck saying Elon Musk has no authority to be stepping in these organizations doing oversight.
Yeah, he does have the authority because Donald Trump really put there and gave him the just like USAID doesn't have the authority. Nobody voted in here. That's the actual oligarchy. That's the deep state that we don't vote for. Hello, and it's being exposed. That's exactly what we voted for. It's exactly why he's there. Yes, it is. So, hello, don't fall for the utter evil lie.
Well, Elon Musk is anything on his own. You heard himself say that he is being authorized by Donald Trump himself. In fact, Doge is not just some outside advisory group. They're now formally a part of the U.S. government. They've now occupied the White House digital office. This was a major event that got very little press, I feel. For 6 months now, everyone's been talking about Doge might be not powerful at all because it's even going to be a part of the government. Well, now Doge is part of the government. It has an office in the White House. And now they're saying it's too powerful. So, this is like Goldilocks. The porridge is too cold and it's too hot. But the fact is the executive branch is authorized to do this, and now they're in the executive branch. So suck it.
AOC says Elon Musk is not smart. Just one.
AOC started her career in USAID.
Yeah. Go down that rabbit hole, Mike. Just real fast.
Yeah. Yes. AOC's miracle career, where she was plucked, from one of a 10,000 person lottery to be the sponsored group of an NGO to make her way into Congress is just a bartender. Well, AOC, while she was at Boston University, was a participant in this highly political fast track program called, I believe it's called the Nyman International Cultural Exchange Program. And this is, in the words of its own program, not your typical study abroad program, because it is a democracy promotion program parked out of Boston University, sponsored by USAID, and it is a political fast track that puts you directly in a sort of groomed position for international relations and foreign affairs job. In fact, one of AOC's cohorts and one of her classmates in that very same program became the head of USAID for the region. She was plucked. Then get this. Okay,
so you see why they're fighting against this? They're kicking and screaming. They're saying all kinds of nonsense like this is a government takeover. They're saying President Elon is taking over our government. Oh my God. It's just evil. They're lying. It's a lie. Our government's been taken over by these evil politicians. Like, wake up, people, for what AOC is. Hello? Wake up for what she is. She's being exposed and she's kicking and screaming.
She was plucked into Niger in 2009 at the absolute epicenter heart of a civil war, a military civil war that was happening in the region, where U.S. was already putting embargoes on the in-power government and organizing a military coup to oust that government, where they then would go on to write Niger's new constitution. And AOC was one of a small group of people who were descended on to liaise with the indigenous population there and put them basically into turn them into regime change activists. The only two courses in the study abroad program were social change and youth engagement activism. Basically, you could pick between teaching people how to overthrow their government or angering up the indigenous population for how to overthrow the government while the U.S. government was conducting an in-process regime change operation. And again, like I said, one of her classmates became the USAID ambassador to the region shortly thereafter.
So AOC is a USAID.
Liz Cheney started her career at USAID. It goes on and on and on. I call this the great USAID vortex of despair, which is that basically every major political and financial promoter of USAID is either directly on the take, indirectly on the take through one of the groups that they run, like Bill Kristol, or their sponsors and donors, their direct donors rely on it, like Jamie Raskin.
So AOC is a USAID plant.
Well, she's a USAID creation. I don't want to remove all agency because think of it like a fellowship program. Many NGOs or many think tanks, they have fellowship programs where they bring you in, they teach you your ways, they connect you with mentors, the people who will open the doors for you throughout your political career. And as a fellow, you maintain relations with that organization and you do favors for the rest of your life. And this is how people make it in DC. They start in these incubator programs, they network with those people, they do favors for years. And so they are a trusted partner. They know when they not.
This is why I'll never get anywhere. This is why I'll probably never go anywhere as a content creator, because this is very similar, by the way, in content creation. You get in with this cabal of content creators and sort of like do their bidding, and you're owned essentially. Like you got to do it's just compromise after compromise after compromise.
Nominate AOC to Congress. AOC is going to use her perch in Congress to keep the USAID money flowing because it was USAID who opened the door. So I don't want to go so far as to call it a plant or a cutout. But these are how skids get greased in Washington. She's in network. She's in the club. She's a USAID network promoter. And what you find is that creates a massive conflict of interest when USAID is doing things that don't actually advance U.S. national interests, but advance the cloistered interests of that set because they've got their sponsors in Congress, like AOC.
So here's the number one thing we all should be learning as American citizens and world citizens, right? Is that trust nothing. Trust nothing. And that goes for content creators. Trust nothing. Hope for the best and verify. We can hope for the best, but I can tell you, I don't trust anybody. Trust nothing. All right.
So, Mike, I know we're up against a hard out, and I have a final question for you, and I think it sort of hits at the very heart of this issue, because the people that you were seeing screaming in the streets, the rent-a-mobs that are back, you predicted it, Mike. You can set your watch by it, pal. The rent-a-mobs are back, and they're now protesting to keep USAID. I wasn't planning on this one. Maybe you were. How panicked right now is the corporatist Democrat Party in the reports that we're hearing? This is the single greatest victory that President Trump has ever achieved by cutting off funding for USAID, and the sheer screeching and demonic screams about this. I mean, I haven't heard them like this since Kavanaugh, Mike. This is really something. I mean, this is really something. This is like Russiagate level of mobilization. How devastating is this when the funding gets cut off, and why is it that they were able to hype for so long?
Well, what I'll say is you ain't seen nothing yet. If the screaming is loud now, just wait to see what's coming. Because the fact is USAID is not really actually, there's a funding pause, but USAID is fully funded through Q1, which means they still have the money that was dispersed through March 2025. So we're still a full month from them actually being hit by this funding pause. And so what they're doing right now is
that true? I thought they literally paused immediately the funding. I'm pretty sure that's the case. So I want to check that. Mike, I wish I could just ask Mike, really? Wait, no, I think they actually just paused the funding now. I'm pretty sure. Okay, but maybe I'm wrong.
Is scrambling into action and building the consensus about the most twisted and sadistic path forward in order to stop that from happening, which is why I keep saying focus on the internationalist Republicans, because that is who they're going to run to Congress to stop this. It was the House. I believe it was the House Foreign Affairs Committee from their official.
Yep, they're going to run to the corrupt Republicans, and it's a tell. Wake up, voters! Wake up on what your people are doing. I'm really thankful here in Missouri. It's like I've got two awesome senators. It's just the Missouri senators are kicking ass right now. Although I have heard some questionable things about Eric Schmidt. But I'll tell you, everything I've seen from him, he's on the right side. Like he's all for getting rid of USAID. Senator Josh Hawley's kicking ass. I love it. But hey, wherever you are, and also not just those guys, but also my other buddy, my House member in my district here. My brain is not working on his name.
X account who put out a formal tweet saying that Elon Musk can't do this. Well, guess what? It's Republicans running that Twitter account. There's a Republican majority. And my concern is in the same way that when the U.S. has historically gone into foreign countries to run to Congress to stop this. It was the House. I believe it was the House Foreign Affairs Committee from their official X account who put out a formal tweet saying that Elon Musk can't do this. Well, guess what?
Really? I didn't see that. That needs to be exposed, uprooted.
It's Republicans running that Twitter account. That's the Republican majority. And my concern is in the same way that when the U.S. has historically gone into foreign countries in order to pull off a military coup, what they'll do is they'll back channel with a critical component, a critical quorum of military generals and get them to defect, that you're going to see the same thing with Democrats moving over to Republicans, offering them money, offering them favors in order to defect from Mike Johnson, defect from Donald Trump, defect from Elon, and move into a coalition bloc, a majority coalition bloc, in order to stop this from happening, in order to keep the funds flowing, or in order to make sure that the reforms that are put in at state effectively keep, what I'm indelicately calling the USAID herpes infection that it will inherit.
How deep does the rabbit hole go, Mike? In conclusion, what's next? Predict the future. You've done it a million times on this program.
So Zan is saying they lost in court, so they can't freeze it. They can't freeze the money, but they fired everyone that can issue checks. Right. So yeah, I don't think there's any checks going out. Maybe that, I don't know. Huh. This is wild. This is really wild. They are doing everything they can to circumvent the good truth, the corruption. They're doing everything they can. And that's what we got. That's what he said right there. They're going to be targeting the deep state Republicans to try and circumvent Trump, just like they did last time when he was in office. Trump, though, is like steps ahead of them this time around.
You're Ben Stradamus. I think we even have some graphics of you as Nostradamus. What will be found next here with USAID? Where does the rabbit hole go?
Well, the rabbit hole is mind-bending. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. What people will find is that they've been living their entire lives in a Truman Show, where every person they think that they've met or they think they know, or every institution they think they know is in either in large or in small part a USAID concoction, from the media to social media censorship algorithms, to prosecutors, to universities, to unions, to public health institutions, to coalitions within political parties, you name it. Every institution in society is inflected by the influence of USAID. What I'll say in my particular focus is restoring freedom on the internet.
Every single thing. I mean, they have their claws so deep. It's in unions. I know unions are like, God, I don't trust unions. I've got some stories I'll eventually talk about with that. It's like, I hope unions are able to reform and wake up from being like mob bosses. I've got direct, very specific things I can talk about there. So the USAID has their claws dug so deep, it is going to be a war.
Restoring freedom of speech online. And one of the main focuses of the investigative journalism work that I do over the next few months is going to be fully revealing the role of USAID in censoring the internet and in control over media, and as well the role of USAID in treasonously betraying the United States of America by working with foreign governments and paying and funding and pressuring and coordinating with foreign governments for them to pass internet censorship laws in order to devastate U.S. social media companies like X or Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook or YouTube, in order for USA to be able to have control over what people can and can't say on the internet, which then determines the results of elections, which then determines the constitution of governments. And so that, to me, is an immediate issue that needs to be.
And that's a cornerstone of this channel: freedom of speech, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. Anyone trying to censor, anyone trying to fact check and the misinformation bullshit, evil to the, I mean, that's how whoever controls the information has all the power, period. We cannot let them censor speech. We cannot let them control the narrative. That's how all this happened. That's how the garbage with COVID happened. That's how they literally indoctrinated like zombies the entirety of mankind to get the vaccine, which isn't actually a vaccine, and all the truths coming out about the vaccine and the COVID and all of it because of the misinformation campaigns. I mean, this is like, I never thought we'd live to see the day. I thought we were done, honestly. I thought the only thing left for the world to do is burn. There's nothing left. There's no hope. Humanity's hopeless. And so the only way, listen, if we don't cut the head off of the evil going on here, they will come back in full force, and it will be straight up Nazi communism to the core that we already have been under. We've been fully communist right under our nose, Marxist. We got to keep fighting. It's going to be a knockdown, drag out fight.
At the forefront of Americans' minds, and also has to be fully understood by American diplomats as they do battle with the European Union and its censorship laws, as they do battle with the UK and its censorship laws, as they do battle with Brazil and its censorship laws, battle with Australia and its censorship laws, because what they're going to find is as they're negotiating with foreign countries in terms of the rules of the road for the internet, they're going to find that the people on the other side of the table are not just foreign people and foreign governments. They're going to find members of their own USA.
Yes.
So they're negotiating against their own country. Their own country is undermining them.
Benny, wake up to this, my man. I think Benny, he's so he's in with these politicians. And I think I'm like very much on believing that Benny is a good guy through and through. Like, but again, you just got to be careful with influencers. Okay. You heard what he said, Benny. You heard it. Yeah, of course, Chuck Schumer is the enemy. And of course, Shifty Schiff, Adam Schiff, and Nancy Pelosi and Elizabeth Warren are just demons. But here's what he said. He's concerned about the Republicans. So, Benny, I'm going to hold you accountable to this, my man. Stand for truth, and I believe you will. I believe this guy. I believe in guys like Alex Jones and the InfoWars guys. But again, you just got to be careful. Even Marco Rubio. Now, he's doing great. You know, all these guys, you just be careful. All right. Trust nothing, hope for the best, believe the best, but trust nothing, verify, and never stop. Never stop verifying. Because one day, this has happened to me way too many times in my life where I give people my stamp of approval based off some things and then find out I've been hoodwinked. And it's like, nope, never going to trust anybody ever again fully. Don't do it.
On an
A
international
rogue
stage.
element.
Yes, that's
a
right.
rogue element of their own country, yes.
The tax dollars that they pay go to their own undoing. It's so dark. It's so evil. Mike, I hope that you come back for regular segments. Everyone just freaking loved this. And I feel like we could spend another 20 hours on it. And so thank you, Mike, for your work on this. It's something that you've been, again,
follow this man
on the mountainside in the wilderness.
You guys follow this man. He's just killing it. And I mean, it's wild. I wonder if they're out for his head. Like, I'm just going to keep digging and digging and digging and digging. I'm surprised that there's not a prize for his head. They're already trying to literally, people are calling to murder Doge guys. These brainiac Doge guys, by the way, these highly skilled, phenomenal Doge team guys that are just pouring out by the day endless corruption, literally proving the corruption to tens of millions of people. We gotta spread the word to our friends, family. We got to be posting on Facebook. And who cares if they hate you and they don't like? It's like, okay, whatever. You just got to share the truth. All right, they'll wake up. I'm not saying you're going to change. You're not going to change anybody's mind, but you just got to speak the truth and post the truth and reveal the truth. And if you're wrong about something, that's fine. Just own it. Oops, I said something that was wrong and fix it. And who cares? This isn't about our egos. This isn't about all the nonsense that goes on. This is about the truth being known. Let's go.
Wilderness. In the snowy, blizzardy wilderness. You've been calling about this and yelling about this. And you don't seem so crazy anymore, Mike. You actually seems like the only person that you actually seem like the only person who was right.
Danny, can I say one thing before we go?
It's literally, you can say that exactly about Alex Jones. And that's just what's so funny. How does Alex Jones, man? Because he was apparently, he showed a lot of old footage where he was speaking out against U.S. aid. And it just, I guess, I never listened to him in the past. And I've either never heard of USAID my whole life, or it just went right over my head if someone's ever talked about it. Okay.
Please. Two things, actually. One is we are still in the wilderness. Let me make this clear. We cannot make the mistake of what the Brits did when the Brexit referendum happened and put all the energy into the campaign for the first thing. And then
we're still in the wilderness, just like when Moses freed the Israelites. Egypt didn't just lay down. It got a little dicey. And it's coming. Just be ready for anything. Be ready for another pandemic that they release, because they have dozens of them. Bioweapon, literally they call it bioweapons. We've got World War III coming, maybe. Who knows? We got riots, vandalism, we got insanity, we've got false flags. Somebody's going to go kill a bunch of rioters, and then they're going to blame it on Trump. They're going to try and crash the stock market. They're going to try and release bioweapons. They're going to like fog in the sky. Who the hell knows? Whatever they're going to try and do, like kill electric grids. Just be ready for it. We're not unaware of their schemes. All right.
And lay off the gas, and then suddenly it's almost worse than if it had never happened at all. There are many ways this could go sideways. Secondly, if you can please do me this favor, I know you just pulled up my X account at Mike Ben Cyber on screen.
Yeah, I don't know why.
If you could go back to that and go to foundationforfreedomonline.com, and I'm going to show you exactly what to put on screen, because I want everybody to read this. Go to the search bar there and type in USAID and pull up that first document right there. USAID internal documents reveal government plot to promote censorship initiatives.
Wow.
I consider this to be
he just lays it out there, people. I've read a whole bunch of these documents. Oh my gosh, because he posts them. I haven't actually gone to this website, which I will be, but it's like, holy smokes.
And there's much more to the story than just this, but this is a really great window for your audience to understand USAID's vision for censorship of the internet, the role in coordinating advertiser boycotts, the role in explicitly targeting the Trump movement and domestic populists in Europe and around the world, their focus on what they call psychological inoculation and essentially control over the psychology of people around the world. This is a huge report that I think you'll never see USAID the same way in terms of its connection to social media. So I just want to, I know we published that about a year ago, but it's still highly relevant. And I just want to make sure people know that it's there.
The wonderful thing about the internet is that even if you delete the USAID web pages, if you try and take down the X accounts of USAID, there's always a record of it. You can find out what USAID was doing. It all exists and it's all there. And you can also find people who were right. You can go back and you can watch clips. You can find people who were telling you the truth. You can find people who were trying to lie to you. Mike Benz is one of those guys who's been telling you the truth for years. And it was a very, very lonely job 2 years ago when Mike started coming on our show. And now he may well be the single most correct man in all of media. That's why you must follow Mike, support his work, go to his website, and ensure that Mike has as much power as possible right here. Foundation for Freedom Online, 707,000 followers on X, well on his way to 1 million. Let's help him get there. Mike, Godspeed.
Let's go.
Important work possibly on the internet. Right
Let's go.
Benny, thanks for seeing the vision in this, years ago, and you've really been at the forefront in terms of amplifying and making so much of this possible too. So thank you. You're the man.
Godspeed, sir.
All right. All right.
It was the CIA cutting Mike's mic. It was that, it was. It always happens when you do a show like this. We're sitting here chuckling in the studio. It always happens when we do a show like this. Oh, suddenly our guest is going to lose their internet or lose their mic connection.
Yep.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we had connection to Mike Benz today for the better part of the last hour. And again, you feel like you barely even scratched the surface. The Trump lawfare, vaccine mandates, the biolabs, the rent-a-mobs, AOC, Liz Cheney, the wholesale creation of politicians here in this country that have been totally astroturfed. Not a single thing about AOC makes sense. None of it. What? She has tens of millions of social media followers.
Yep.
Why exactly? What has AOC created? What has she done? What accomplishment has she ever had?
Nothing.
How did she run out of nowhere virtually and defeat a very powerful incumbent? It is all fake, as Mike Benz says, the Truman Show. And it might be uncomfortable and hard process here. Yeah, here's AOC with nearly 13 million subs on X. Why is that exactly? It's almost as if there was a regime that was astroturfing.
Insane.
These agents, in order to sow chaos in our country. It's not authentic. It's not real. We deal inside of authentic, real communications with people on the internet all day long. We know when it's fake.
Yeah, that's a lie. She is owned by the lobbyist. Absolute corruption is going to be unveiled. You got a target right on your forehead, AOC. It's coming. You're kicking and screaming and just putting a huge target right on your forehead for Doge to look into you. Yep.
This is Fugazi, ladies and gentlemen. And we're excited to see this entire clown world come collapsing down, ladies and gentlemen. Don't let debt collapse down around you. If you're feeling buried in credit card debt right now, personal loans or medical debt, go check out my friends at PDS Debt Solutions. PDS Debt Solutions will help you manage your debt, and they empower you to take control using your platform. They go beyond the numbers and understand your unique.
All right. PDS Debt Solutions, apparently.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Too much, frankly, to cover on a single show, but we've seen some incredible breakdowns of what we just talked about today. Here's an excellent one from Charles Payne on Fox News, explaining what actually is happening here with USAID, why this is so strange, and also why it's mainstream now. This is so important to get mainstream penetration into this topic that we've been talking about here on this program for years with Mike Benz. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're at scale. Here we go.
And these are just the numbers that we've cut in the, 10 days?
It's called a whirlwind, and it's just getting started.
It is. Let's get through some of it. This is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Look how much we were spending. They had to cut almost 20 million. Department of Agriculture, Charles?
110 million, Office of Personnel Management, 500 million. USAID, obviously, this is the one that's in the news right now,
Right.
200, over 200 million.
Because Elon shut it down.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Listen, all of these things ostensibly were designed for good reasons or good intentions, but
Right.
then they become cover. You ever ask yourself, where do all these folks who work in these administrations go after the administration's ousted? How do they still live in mansions after they're out of government?
What's the answer?
Well, a lot of it is these NGOs. A lot of these NGOs operate things that are funded by USAID, and it's amazing. As we start to peel the layer of the onion.
The insane web of the NGOs. That was last week's news. Like hundreds of thousands of shell companies. So you guys think critically here. Just wake up. How do these politicians make 170 grand a year, which, by the way, is way too much, plus their pensions, plus their benefits? It's just nuts. Okay. And then somehow they become worth tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. And these people are literally career politicians, and they're worth tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. And that's just what we see. Wake up, people. Like, how does this happen? Nothing to see here. We don't want to look in. Right. The American voters don't need to look into what you guys are doing with your money. Right. It's just corruption to the core, deep, dark shit being revealed in real time by the day.
We're going to see people like, oh, I thought this person was a journalist. He's getting millions of dollars from taxpayers.
Right,
For what?
right.
For
What exactly is this agency? What was it created to do?
It was created to sort of represent America around the world and help other nations.
Humanitarian
Right?
efforts.
It's aid, but again, it's like who decides what the aid is, who gets in. By the way, who manages it? There's no accountability for it.
Right.
And so you've got to shut it down. It's become a beast. It does things that we're not supposed to do. So let's say Congress says, hey, we no longer want to do X, Y, Z in this country. USAID can fund an entity to do the same thing on behalf of special interests. So even though the government's not directly funding it, the taxpayers are still paying for it against the wishes of our Congress. It's really become an outlaw industry.
I mean, people are waking up right now, getting ready to take their kids to school and go to their jobs. Hardworking Americans, they work for these tax dollars, and then we're wasting it on. Look at this. This is where we're sending money to other countries. Serbian LGBTQ rights group, they got $1.5 million. Electric vehicles for Vietnam, $2.5 million. South African transgender HIV research, $30 million. Uganda LGBTQ rights group, $4 million. And Egyptian tourism, $6 million. I heard on Sean's show last night, we gave, according to Eric Schmidt, our senator.
Egyptian tourism, $6 million. Right. And then the money doesn't get there. So tons of people are crying out all over the place. I mean, it's overwhelming that they don't even get the money. It just gets laundered.
$20 million to Sesame Street shows in Iraq.
Yeah. And again, a lot of this is pushing in
$20 million to Sesame Street shows in Iraq. This is the nonsense that our tax dollars are going to.
An alternative agenda, right? And Uganda has their own government. They have their own people. They have their own say.
Right.
They may not want us pushing LGBTQ in their country, right? We're trying to force our values, or not. Sometimes it's not even our values. Sometimes it may be the values of special interests using taxpayer money. It has to stop.
We went way deeper than that on this program, and we're way more coordinated and sophisticated in how we went about this. The point of that clip is to show you that it's being now spoken about in the mainstream. This is now being mainstreamed. This is a panic moment for those inside of our federal government who've been using USAID as a golden goose to fund the left wing in this country. It is my contention that you will watch the atomization of the left and their capacity.
Here's another thing. USAID just now is just coming out. They were funding the media hit pieces on Trump. They're also funding BBC to run anti-Trump, anti-Musk reporting. They're funding this similar to the $300 million given to the Biden administration to Reuters to target. So $300 million of USAID money, which is our taxpayer money, was given by the Biden administration to Reuters to target Musk. I mean, you guys, this is nuts. And they're literally ripping this out at the root. Let's go. George Soros is very much tied into this as well. Alex Jones is talking about it.
To put up any resistance right now. And the reason why they've let Trump roll so hard is that they don't want to show Trump where the targets are. They want to plant that a year from now, or 2 or 3 years from now, 3 years from now. But without any money, if you shut down the money spigot, then you end the actual system before it begins. It can't operate without these piles of cash, without these mountains of cash, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. This organ, USAID, has a larger budget than the CIA and the State Department combined. What does that tell you about its operational capacity? The smartest man inside of the administration that is currently like
this guy, Mike Benz. All right, listen, he just tweeted this. He said, I would feel a lot better about all of this if I saw strong statements of support from House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune. That will throw their weight 100% behind the White House USAID's reforms. Like, why aren't they speaking out? Why aren't they calling out Pelosi? Why aren't they calling out Adam Schiff and Chuck Schumer? Why aren't they calling out the nonsense that they're spewing in AOC? Like, call it out. Come on. Well, is it because they're owned by USAID and the conglomerates and all the corruption? Is that why? That's Mike's very message. He wants to see the Republicans take a stand. That's what we got to campaign for. We should be calling our senators. I'm pretty sure the Missouri senators have actually called him out and spoken against it. I'm pretty sure. Let's go.
At the White House every single day is Stephen Miller, the Deputy Chief of Staff. He's the architect of so many of President Trump's policies. When he speaks on a subject, he speaks on it with authority and declaratively. Stephen Miller and Elon Musk saying the same thing here, that USAID was operational as a government outside of the government, engaging in the usurping of and undermining of the American public. This is how you know that we are officially at the death knells of this organ, when Stephen Miller and Elon Musk are over the target. Here we go.
The president is at the apex of his powers when he's exercising the foreign policy of the United States. So he has plenary authority to carry out the foreign policy of the United States. So bureaucrats at USAID cannot interfere in the affairs of foreign countries to prop up regimes, to thwart America's interests, to facilitate mass illegal immigration, nor to facilitate diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, which violate federal civil rights law. All this DEI
Let's go. He's calling it out, baby.
violates the federal civil rights law of the United States. The president is at the apex of authority here. Moreover, as you mentioned, Congress doesn't dictate to these agencies how to spend the money. Agencies exercise discretion on these grants, on these contracts. So take, for example, funding to these non-government organizations, NGOs, that fund open borders. So they funnel tens of billions of dollars to these open borders private sector orgs. Congress never passed a law giving those organizations that money. President Trump can not only pause all those funds, not only can the agencies pause those funds, but agencies can instead, if they wanted to, give those funds to organizations that support border security, that deport illegal aliens, that find criminal aliens, that provide detention for dangerous illegal immigrants in this country. There's no law passed by Congress that says that we have to funnel money to organizations that traffic children. Quite the opposite. These are crimes. Illegal immigration is a crime. DEI is a crime.
Funnel money to organizations that traffic children.
Okay, this just in the Senate Intel Committee on this is on Tulsi Gabbard. They voted 9-8 to advance Gabbard and DNI nomination to the floor. Party line vote. Woo. Thank God. So I guess both RFK and Gabbard are advancing to where we can finally see the final vote. Let's go.
Well. What is this, ladies and gentlemen? This entire documentary made about how USAID was instrumental in the trafficking of children throughout the country.
Yes.
The trailer for this document
was instrumental in human trafficking, people. An organ where they cut out organs of people they traffic. It's just deep, dark shit. USAID was in tandem working in business as a business relationship with the cartels. Wake up, people.
documentary includes the guest that we had on our show, Mike Benz. And when I mention this will send chills down your spine, we can get to this topic with Mike Benz because I wanted to lay it bare for you here. USAID was, of course, the nexus point that funded the NGOs to bring all of the children and all the human trafficking and all of the refuse into our country.
Yep.
Again, when I call it the heart of darkness, this is what I mean.
Yep.
It was USAID.
Yes.
I fear much more than the CIA because the USAID is how CIA gets shit done.
Let's go, Benny. I showed this last night. This is awesome.
USAID is clearly in the job of trying to bring about regime change. It has secret bank accounts, shell companies.
USAID gets $50 billion a year in U.S. taxpayer money. That's a larger overt fund than the CIA has.
USAID perhaps is the new CIA.
Have we ever tried to meddle in other countries' elections?
Oh, probably.
This is not just about over there. This is about here. They have a process, a system by which they destroy other nations. And they use that same process and system in order to destroy the United States.
It's a plot against our own people.
America, what if I told you that the United States government was acting like the world Gestapo, using organizations like USAID under the pretense of humanitarian aid to topple governments, install politicians, and orchestrate regime changes in third world countries?
I disagree with that. As somebody who has helped plan coup d'etat, not here, but other places.
Oh, he let that slip. Yep. That's why he just got all of his security clearance, his government clearance revoked from Trump. Bolton right there. He literally just said it. He's been involved in toppling governments. I mean, there's so much behind this. And this, guys, we need to look into this guy deeper. He's doing a documentary coming out this week on USAID.
These are places that are practically entirely run at this point by the CIA and the U.S. State Department, which is, of course, a CIA front.
USAID provides most of the money.
This isn't a giveaway.
The State Department provides the policy vision.
This makes a difference to people's perception of us. Tricky endeavors, whether it's fighting terrorism,
Al-Shabaab groups in USAID camps,
or narcotics,
Joe Biden's State Department is commanding the Taliban to keep the opium flowing.
or oppression, or resistance to governance.
Those USAID trucks were stopped at the border to Venezuela with fully automatic weapons.
All of those things.
So they're doing opium, they're doing heroin. USAID is involved in opium, the drug trade, full stop.
I don't think that's humanitarian aid.
What a difference that makes.
If we stand for democracy anywhere, we have to stand for it everywhere, including in Guatemala.
Guatemala. What if I told you that USAID, the State Department, and the CIA created a fraudulent political party and then used that illegitimate party to rig the 2023 Guatemalan election so they could install a list of CIA-controlled politicians who would continue to allow them to run the world's largest child trafficking network out of Guatemala?
Nothing to do with that? Correlation, not causation?
That is absurd.
They didn't deny it, which means that they admitted it.
This is no question a political shocker in Guatemala.
The U.S. government, the Biden administration, helped cover up voter fraud.
Why Guatemala? Why not some other country?
Guatemala is concerned about child trafficking, the NGOs that are trafficking the children.
Jill Biden was the chairman of the board of Save the Children.
You guys just raided Save the Children.
Guess who stepped in? The State Department, U.S. Embassy, and USAID. Another coincidence?
America. What if I told you that DHS, under the direct orders of Alejandro Mayorkas, would create a public-private partnership with Mexican cartels, and that HHS, under the direct orders of Xavier Becerra, would create
a public-private partnership with the cartels, you guys. Insane. Overthrown governments. And here it is, the human trafficking. We got to stop this.
public-private partnership with NGOs like Save the Children and Southwest Key programs. And in this quasi-public-private partnership, they would use your tax dollars to fund the world's largest international child trafficking operation.
As to who we know where they are, that is outside the responsibility of the Department of Homeland Security.
This is nothing but lies. Nothing but lies.
Secretary Mayorkas, he acts like none of this ever happens.
It's his policies that caused over 500,000 children being smuggled in this country. And he also knew who to blame.
HHS places those children.
That's on you.
Was that a question to me? Are you familiar with the sponsors that utilize a strip club as an address?
You shrug your shoulders and then send another batch of kids out to sponsor.
Human trafficking bust at an egg farm. Federal prosecutors call it modern-day slavery.
Of course, we investigate cases of trafficking.
Another lie.
Ryan Matta.
This individual's name is Ryan Mata. I'll put up the account right now.
Let's go.
Go ahead and check in on this documentary. I don't know Ryan, but I really liked that trailer. And
yes,
is USAID responsible for the child trafficking ring that is the largest on Earth? How deep does
it's at Ryan Mata, M-A-T-T-A Media, at Ryan Mata Media.
This all go? Diddy, Epstein, where are the children? Why are hundreds of thousands missing? What role did the U.S. government play in this? Where are the children? Bearing the lead here, I guess, on the program, ladies and gentlemen, maybe the most important question. Too many, like the giant whale carcass at the bottom of the ocean, it's too big for any one show to carve up. But we're going to do our job here, and this is going to be a recurring investigation for us at this program. The heart of darkness must be exposed, and the easiest way to expose it, obviously, is to shine light on it. It will burn, it will sear, and the cockroaches will run. Ladies and gentlemen, our Salt That Lid for the day, the cockroaches on MSNBC, shrieking about Elon Musk. This is a supercut. It's very special to tell you that we are over the target. Why not end, ladies and gentlemen, today's show on a little bit of uplifting news with a Salt That Lid. That's Salt. The Salty Lids on MSNBC.
Because what's happening right now is a hostile takeover of the U.S. government. There's no other way to describe it.
Over the past 2 weeks, which kind of feels like it's been 2 years, we have learned just how fragile our democracy is and how relatively easy it is for someone who's determined and really well-funded to steal and corrupt it. If you were going to write a playbook for how to steal a democracy in less than 20 days, it would sure look a lot like this.
Who has the nuclear codes?
Yeah, this is the psyops of the terrorist organizations called the media. This is what they do. It's not half-truths anymore. This isn't like open as a debate. These guys are outright tyrants. That's what's going on here. Yeah, like the video, subscribe, bell button. Let's go, Benny Johnson.
Think about it. The only answer to that question, the only honest answer to that question tonight, for the first time in history, is we don't know. We don't know who has the nuclear codes. We don't know who has what inside the Trump government. We don't know who is doing what in
garbage. You corrupt, evil people. Garbage.
Inside the Trump government. But we do know they are doing things that have never been done before and that are illegal. We know that those things are not legal.
Yes, they are legal.
No power, yeah, right? And it's like, yeah, the old Lord of the Rings, right? The King of Rohan, you have no power, yeah. Can't do anything about it. They can't stand the shock and awe, which is what's happening right now in the administration. It's shock and awe, and they're helpless. This is why we're focusing on USAID, is because I'm finally seeing them coalesce around something. I've been waiting. Like, what was the target? What was the golden calf? What was the sacred cow? Trump's going after so many things so quickly. They didn't even put up a fight with like gendered bathrooms. They didn't put up a fight with DEI. I mean, a little squealing here and there, but like nothing. No full-scale walkouts, no mass media propaganda, no senators like screaming and raging and rampaging. Like, what was going to be the thing? You know, when something's when something really is infected, you press on it, it hurts, you scream, right? There was something that Trump was going to hit and bear down on, and they were going to scream. And this is it. This is the skeleton key. This is over the target. So we ain't done with USAID yet. We're very happy to have sunk our teeth into it. We humbly.
This is a good question. When the hell is Kash Patel's confirmation? Like, when is that vote? Apparently, they've been trying to delay it. Delay. I don't know. I thought today we were getting RFK Jr. I don't know what's going on. Soon, though. It's got to be this week, right?
We present to you, ladies and gentlemen, all the evidence that we can find on these things. And we appreciate so very much your viewership of the show because it gives us outsized capacity to speak truth.
Let's go,
and to change this country, to uncover these things.
Let's go, Benny.
Frankly, we're beating a lot of major traditional broadcast media. Hey, Alex, pop up, get that show screen charts from yesterday. I want to show you guys like what we're building here and why this is so important that you subscribe to this channel. You can support us in other ways. You can become members. You can go to the Benny Brigade and become a member, ladies and gentlemen, on our site. But this is our everyday. And this is our everyday.
Let's go.
Competing with Bloomberg, NBC News, ABC, CBS, CNN, and we're just destroying them.
Let's go.
And so our capacity to do our own investigations, to do our own research is locked and linked with the viewership of this program and our ability to speak the truth.
Let's go.
And now we have this outsized power, and we're going to use it to protect children, to stop biolabs, to prevent the next COVID-19, to end gender madness, to potentially cut off the funding spigot for the globalist left, which comes out of absolutely nowhere, and to stop the next AOC from being astroturfed, to potentially stop the next assassin of President Trump, or the next lawfare against you, me, our political movement. This is called offense, ladies and gentlemen. We've lived our entire lives on defense as a Republican Party. No. We're populists now. We're American nationalists. We go on offense to protect our country. That's what this entire show is about. We defend for our children, our sacred American rights, and rid ourselves of the cancer of non-elected government that exists wholly and totally outside of the United States Constitution, which puts you and me in charge of this nation, actually. And ultimately, over the expanse of time, the definitional democracy is that we, the majority, get what we want. That this country gets what it wants.
Yes.
And we want to end this left-wing globalist insanity that is so utterly perverse and so incredibly dark, unchristian, and against the values of humanity.
That's right.
And so we're just deeply and profoundly thankful for you allowing us to endeavor in that today, to go deep on these things. We're going to be doing a lot more of it, a lot more deep dive investigations, revealing and doing our own investigations and journalism. And we know that we'll have truth on our side because every single day we do the verse of the day. From Psalms 95, ladies and gentlemen, let us sing to the Lord. Let us shout joyfully to the rock of our salvation. I don't know if it was the CIA that cut Mike's mic today. I'm not sure. It's a fun joke that we have on going on the show whenever we have a audio issue. But I can tell you this. The reason why we can fearlessly attack subjects like this, and you heard Mike Benz say it, we've been doing it for years, far before it was ever mainstream, and when it could potentially cost us really everything, was because we have the rock of our salvation. Because we base the program on truth that is immovable, and that gives us great confidence moving forward. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope it gives you confidence.
Well said. Shout out Benny. All right. So listen, there's this video we have to watch. I'm gonna stream it at either 1.5x or 1.75. I think I'm gonna go 1.5, but I might up it. This video, we showed this guy, Dr. David Martin, the other night on the vaccines. At the end, he had the longest little clip on that video. Was like 20 minutes, and it was yesterday. Every single day, Alex Jones is putting out banger after banger after banger on the news. Same with Benny, by the way. Same with Dan Bongino. It's so cool to see these people, like, man, they're like in their lane. People, Megyn Kelly, Trish Reagan. I mean, just on and on. I'm just so thankful to see these people out there speaking the truth. This is a must watch here. All right. We got to watch this. We got to watch this. Okay. So I'm going to be talking way more about the COVID.
Celebrating the genocide of, well, as
I'm going to be talking way more about the COVID vaccine, how we created it. All right. Stuff like that. So, but this also ties in with USAID, you know, funding this. It's just a banger. It's a must watch. Let's go. Yeah, Schumer spewing garbage right now on Scripps. Schumer has been spewing nonsense, literally calling them the takeover. It's a government takeover. Oh my God. The Nazi browncoats, Donald Trump and Elon Musk, they're coming in, taking over your government. Nope. Our government's already been taken over, and they are revealing the corruption of Chucky Schumer. Get out of here, Chuck. Corrupt, evil human being. Here we go, baby. Here we go.
As I said on many occasions, there are 63 gain-of-function weapons beyond the coronavirus weapons. There are 4 that are coronavirus specific, but there are 63 other biological weapons currently in production in United States universities right now. And if President Trump were to take an executive action to save humanity, what he would do is he would actually place a moratorium on every single one of these gain-of-function programs and shut down all 67 active programs right now, if he was going to do the right thing. Because what's the end game? The end game has always been, and Bill Gates said this very clearly in 2011, the World Health Organization has stipulated this from 2011, and they recited again in 2018 and 2019. Their end game is the decrease of the population of humanity on this planet.
Yep.
And that's a polite way of saying that these are sociopathic murderers who are actually building weapons to conveniently turn what we call healthcare into the front line of the biggest mercenary deployment of mass murdering psychopaths we've ever seen on this planet. And we as a society need to understand that it's not coming from a foreign adversary. It's coming from domestic adversaries who are intent on destroying the orderly structure of the United States. And every single person who's been lamenting this action that's being taken by DOJ and these actions taken by the executive orders that President Trump have issued over the last 14 days, every single person protesting that is actually celebrating the genocide of not only America, but the values for which this country was first established. You cannot, under any moral justification, come up with an excuse that says it's acceptable to have a death rate of American citizens. And that's a quote that has come not only from Moderna, but also from Pfizer. They accept a death rate of American citizens for the purpose of what? And their own profiteering and the mass murder of Americans. I talked about what was called the House of Cards, and the House of Cards was a convergence that was going to happen when the United States Treasury and the United States government would realize that the socialist program that was put in place in the 1930s, which was the effort that was done to create a social system called Medicare and Medicaid, we knew, and by the way, it was known when it was established, that it would run out of money. And we knew that it was going to happen between 2024.
That's exactly right, Kong. This nonsense that they're spewing that Trump's got to answer to the American people. Nope. Chuck, we're looking for you to answer to the American people. We're looking for you who doesn't want the spending of our tax dollars to be revealed. Let it settle in, people. These people are fighting against DOJ auditing and making known where our tax dollars went, the corruption in the government. Nobody wants to see the corruption spending in our government. Right. All right, America, wake up. Wake up. Chucky Schumer, got to get him out of here. He's the epitome of corruption, who, by the way, is under investigation. We all know, I mean, it's just like a sliver of what that man's done. Okay, so like Dr. David Martin just said, all these people, okay, are fighting against DOJ. They don't want this stuff revealed, and they don't like USAID is funding. These are bioweapons. We have the proof. We have the documents of COVID was created as a bioweapon. They said that in 2000, all the way back in 2005, that was said. And now we've got, like he just said, 63 gain-of-function bioweapons being developed in our universities, people. All right.
And 2026. And it turns out that what's happening right now is something that we saw coming in 2007, which was the establishment of a series of events that would lead to 2 outcomes, Alex. One was we needed to shrink the population above the age of 65. Now, why is that important? Turns out that we knew that we were going to get into a population problem, which is we were going to have more people drawing from Social Security than Social Security could actually pay. And so what the country did was it actually had a bifurcated program. One is create the illusion of financial instability so everybody could find out and have a reason to blame the markets for the reason why all of the money they thought they were going to get from the systems that were put in place in the 1930s.
The illusion of financial instability. That's why the BlackRocks, they're shorting the stock market right now. I'm hoping and praying we see another GameStop situation. Let's go.
Medicare and Medicaid, Social Security. They were going to, number one, eviscerate that liquidity. And how do you get the public to buy off on it? You tell them, oh my gosh, look, the stock market's falling apart. Oh my gosh, look, we found out that we're $30 trillion in debt. oh my gosh, all of these things have happened. It's all a smokescreen. Elon Musk, when he got access to the Treasury files, the real reason why they're upset about this is what I'm saying is in those files. They know what I'm saying to be true. And the reason why you need to have a security clearance to get into the Treasury files is because it turns out that we have been accelerating the illiquidity of the Medicare and Medicaid program so that we can crater it. And that was part one. And that's the reason why you see market volatility happening in the last 48 hours. You see it happening worldwide because they're trying to pull the plug out from under the financial system so that we can actually pretend like all of this just happened. The bummer is my videos from 2007 are still up. But the other half of this equation is we need to shrink the population. We need to face the simple facts that the administration that came before us knew that they were setting this administration up for the Hoover narrative. They knew it. They knew they were going to do it. They knew that they could put President Trump on the crosshairs so that he could get branded the Hoover presidency. They knew all of these things. And by the way, I've done shows for the last 10 years where I've talked about this as the presidential term. The 47th presidential term was going to be the Hoover administration blame game. Now, the truth is we're having this conversation now. It's happening before the actual events. But what we know is by 2026 and by 2027, and the only thing that's going to drive that is whether or not foreign governments dump their treasury holdings. That's the only thing that's going to determine the time. But between 2026 and 2027, the Social Security Trust Fund is going to dip below zero, and that means that 18% of our economy is insolvent.
The government ears Alex Jones, who has the largest audience in the country, bigger than any of the networks, the biggest megaphone in the country.
The deep state hates Alex Jones with a vengeance.
Alex Jones is the most extraordinary person I've ever met.
Well, there are a lot of amazing minds here in the United States and around the world in the last 5+ years of the Disease X, global government, tyrannical COVID project. There's a lot of great people that exposed it. And it backfired on the death cult big time. That said, one of the only failings of Trump was being part of this, and I don't believe consciously, and still having some of these people around him in his orbit, and seeing them try to reinsert themselves, even in the press conference last hour, with Trump signing executive orders on the Sovereign Wealth Fund, one of the advisors saying, well, like we bought 2 billion COVID doses, that should be done by the government, make money. And you saw there.
No, that's a spin. He was downing the COVID viruses. The guy that said that was kind of bashing the COVID virus vaccines, saying if we're going to spend $6 billion or whatever he said, then the government should be not just losing all their money, is what he was saying. The context there is king, but he's making a point.
Barry Ellison a few weeks ago with Sam Altman. And so this has to be addressed.
So I still think, Alex, my man, I'm wondering, just like we just saw what happened with Bill Gates, he brought him in close, keep your friends close, your enemies closer. He brought him in and then throat punched him. And I think they literally just missed it. Trump did that on a tweet. So, yeah, okay.
To really expose it and put a spotlight on it because the Trump administration does listen to this broadcast, and it does have an effect, and you listen. I'm very honored to all of you tuning in. But I wanted to get Dr. David Martin on because out of all the amazing minds out there, I think overall he's done the best job with their own documents, their own admissions, chronicling what they did, what their plan is, and what's coming next. And of course, last week I played the clip of the Moderna CEO bragging, oh, we had our vaccine for this ready years before. Yeah, because you made it in the lab. And of course, we've known all this for a long time, but now with Doge getting into the treasury payments and all that coming out, it's even more proof in front of you. So I wanted to get updates on him and the lay of the land on all of this and go over the actual documents of where this was all set up and where this was prepared with Dr. David Martin. He's the founder and chairman of the MCAM Inc., the international leader in innovation, finance, trade, and intangible asset finance. His work has been the subject of 2 internationally awarded documentaries, Patent Wars, which highlights his work on reform, the global innovation system, and future dreaming. A conversation with Dr. David.
Yeah, I don't know, Zan. I'm not sure.
Martin, which is a dialogue about humanity and its optimal interaction in the universe. He has also spoken at the United Nations General Assembly on citizen-led peacemaking initiatives, and has been featured on Bloomberg Television, HBO's last week tonight. And of course, recently, Martin has turned his attention, recently the last 5+ years, to proving his research-based facts around mRNA vaccines, the COVID pandemic, and all the turning. This is an old bio, so we can update that for us here. But in the 51 minutes we have left in this hour, I'd like him to then later, we can do it probably like budget some time on just the general political developments and what Trump's doing and these put options by the big hedge funds to try to crash the economy and derail the Trump agenda, claiming the tariffs.
I'm going to try and get to it here.
To Wuhan. All the developments, as you just commented about the development of the toxins and the biological warfare agents that ultimately became branded as COVID-19. And I just want everybody to remember that while I appreciate every one of these disclosures, there is no question that we are now 24 hours away from the vote on the recommendation of putting Robbert F Kennedy Jr. in as the director of the department.
Which passed today, I guess, for the final vote. So today wasn't the final vote. All right. Let me get this straight. Fauci's NIH aid and U.S. aid sent over $40 million to U.S. taxpayer support to scientists in Wuhan who was working on the bat coronavirus emergence research, who also became patient zero for COVID-19. Yep, that's exactly right. We got the documentation. It's all leaking out.
Health and Human Services, secretary. And I want everybody to understand, and we talked about this on some of our past conversations, Alex, but we have to get to the bottom of the fact that the reason why we have so many Republicans and Democrats opposing Robbert F Kennedy Jr.'s appointment is actually something that I highlighted back in the first quarter of 2020, when I pointed out then, and I sent this graphic to your team, that in the spring of 2020, when all of the conversations were going around about mRNA being the basis for this vaccine initiative, that this thing, this injection of a biological weapon, in the Securities and Exchange Commission filing of Moderna and of BioNTech, which is the Pfizer arm of this campaign, in both of their securities filings, they stated that this was not a vaccine, that this was an experimental gene therapy. And I need to be really clear on the consequence of the
experimental gene therapy. It was not a it's not a vaccine. It's totally different than what a vaccine is. And they lied and peddled this nonsense.
Not only the left side of promoting the pandemic, but I want to be really clear on the medical freedom side failure when it decided to go ahead and fall for the use of the term vaccine. And if we go to that next page of that image, it's important to realize that in their own filings, this is not Dave Martin's opinion, in their own filings, they state, currently mRNA is considered a gene therapy product by the FDA. Now, why is this important? It's important because the vaccine promoting cabal, which is almost all of the committee that RFK has sat in.
The vaccine promoting cabal. That is the best way to put it. The vaccine promoting cabal. And we saw them in full force today on RFK.
In front of for the last couple of days. That vaccine promotion cabal, which put Anthony Fauci into position in 1984.
And the vaccine promoting cabal turned all of us dumbass world citizens into a bunch of little evangelists for their bullshit vaccine. Like absolute villainizing, calling us terrorists who didn't want to take the vaccine, all that nonsense.
So that by 1986, they could get their way on making sure that they got immunity anytime the word vaccine was mentioned. That cabal knows that in the fall of 2019, they sent gene sequences from the Wuhan bioweapon to Moderna. And they know that they put that formula into injections. And far worse than the $53 million that Elon tweeted about last night. Over $500 million, and you got that number correct, over $500 million combined from DARPA and from NIH and NIAID went into programs led and architected by the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill's Ralph Baric. And remember, we've talked about this many times. The reason why we will not allow senators to actually speak the truth about the origins of what they call COVID is because they know, and the American people need to know, that while $53 million went to Wuhan, which is in fact correct from Elon's tweet, over 10 times that amount was spent to create the biological weapon in the United States, architected by the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and Ralph Baric. He is the one who in 2005 said that this was a biological weapon. He is the one that said it was a biowarfare enabling technology. He is the one that sent the material transfer agreement in the fall of 2019, based on the Wuhan Institute of Virology Virus 1 model to the manufacturers of the injection. This lab leak conversation, and even Elon is missing this point. This is not a China lab leak story. This is a biological weapons program in the United States, funded by taxpayer money, 10 times more than what was funded in China. And while I celebrate the evisceration of the criminal corrupt organization in USAID, I want us to be really clear on the fact that until Elon, until President Trump, and until all of the people who are actually still covering up the universities in the United States, until that story is finally told to the American people, we collectively must deal with the fact that the biological weapons program that was started in 2002.
Oops. Okay, I want to go back to that.
Finally told to the American people. Okay.
So a USA Today network investigation identifies more than 200 biosafety level 3 and 4 lab facilities that work with dangerous pathogens and reveals safety records that some of them fought to keep secret. And this goes on and 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 on.
We collectively must deal with the fact that the biological weapons program that was started in 2002, when Ralph Baric first patented the infectious replication defective gain-of-function clone, funded by NIAID, funded by Anthony Fauci, until that particular story is told, none of the truth is coming out. And if Elon has access to the treasury numbers that he says he has, we know that they can hit print on that print queue. And the minute the American public realize that it is our public universities, the same ones that are corrupting the minds of our children, the same ones that are corrupting the social fabric of our society, the same place, by the way, that the helicopter pilot that was allegedly behind the Black Hawk helicopter, she's a UNC Chapel Hill biology grad. Let's get really clear. Her dad is the director of an informatics company that was about COVID electronic health records, that same UNC Chapel Hill has to be front and center in the line of fire if we're going to ever have accountability.
Now,
crazy.
You're going right to the smoking gun of all of this. And that was a big scandal in 2015 because scientists went public and said they're making gain of function, COVID, coronavirus stuff. So they moved it to Wuhan to then have plausible deniability and then had it on the shelf as the new novel virus that would challenge the system that Fauci talked about in 2017. But dumbing it down for us, the big 35,000-foot view, this is obviously a giant DARPA globalist society-changing event. The Disease X, they said, would bring in their world government, their global cashless society around the vaccine passport. They've admitted all of that. What is the master plan? What is really all behind it? Where do they want to go with it? And why would they risk doing something that's killed 30+ million people in the insurance actuaries? And then even though it's blown up in their face, they still keep.
So he says 30 million plus people has been killed by the vaccine, according to insurance actuaries. And I can't find that, but it's probably true. I found a study yesterday that said, and it was like a legit straight up, like from university study that showed we're looking over probably 17 million deaths from the vaccines. He just said 30 million. The number's crazy.
Moving forward with it, I mean, this is obviously much bigger than the Manhattan Project, and it's key to everything.
Correct. And remember, and I'm going to keep making sure we're aware of this. Remember that it is, in fact, October 2014, right after the gain of function moratorium was recommended by the National Science Foundation and all of the federal government agencies. October of 2014, Rand Paul.
So does this tell us anything? So Elon Musk just tweeted, this is an insane misallocation of resources. He said and this has come out, and we heard this from the liberal media, is funny. The FBI had 5,000 out of their 13,000 agents were focused on January 6 protesters. 39% of the entire bureau was weaponized. They didn't realize how this would backfire on them. They're saying Trump is being the tyrant, coming in and firing all these FBI agents everywhere. Oh my gosh. And then they said this was the number1 use of resources the FBI's ever used on J6. The J6, they call it the terrorists, J6 terrorists, even though it was a hoax, as we know. If that should be a wake-up call. We weaponized 39% of our FBI to go against a bunch of peaceful Donald Trump protesters, peaceful protesters supporting Donald Trump. That should be a wake-up call for all of us here.
All still does not bring this up, but in October of 2014, the NIAID sent Ralph Barrick a letter. I've sent that to you guys before, but they received a letter in which they were authorized to continue to actually do gain-of-function research in the United States. The outsourcing to China was a cover-up. The actual weapon production was in North Carolina. And the evidence of this, and your team can pull this up while I'm talking, but in the 2016 Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences publication, Ralph Barrick admits to making the Wuhan Institute of Virology virus 1, and all you have to do is go onto a search engine right now and type in WIV1 poised for human emergence. Alex, that article, published in 2016, was actually done during the gain-of-function moratorium in North Carolina. And it specifically makes reference at the end of the article. At the very end, it references Zhengli Shi, the engineer of the bioweapon in Wuhan, where it acknowledges her contribution to the United States' own activity in creating this biological weapon. We have to understand, we are in, as you know, an information and propaganda war, which is part of all of the nonsense we've had to deal with. And the fact of the matter is, even Elon's announcement of the Wuhan $53 million is part of still the smokescreen, because the fire is in our country.
So what he's saying is that there's a moratorium for gain-of-function research, and they were still doing it anyways, developing COVID here. So the whole lab leak in Wuhan, apparently, is a smokescreen or a cover-up, apparently.
The fire is on our college campuses. And when we have a United States of America university at UNC Chapel Hill thanking the biological weapons architect from China, thank you, Dr. Zhengli Shi of the Wuhan Institute of Virology, for access to the COV sequences for WIV1 spike proteins. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, this is a $500 million that taxpayers had spent so that we would create a lethal weapon to inject into the bodies of Americans and to inject into bodies of people around the world.
And sir, you've hammered this for 5 years and been totally, you've been proven totally right. I'm glad you're going back over this and saying it's breaking now in public consciousness. that it was man-made and all the rest of it, but you're saying it needs to be understood. It's on record. It came from here. So I'm asking the bigger question, because I was covering this back in 2015 when it was a big scandal. They were creating weaponized, stuff there at Chapel Hill, and so were you. My question is, it's hiding in plain view. What is the real end game, and how is it going for them? And then what do we do?
Well, as I said on many occasions, there are 63 gain-of-function weapons beyond the coronavirus weapons. There are 4 that are coronavirus specific, but there are 63 other biological weapons currently in production in United States universities right now. And if President Trump were to take an executive action to save humanity, what he would do is he would actually place a moratorium on every single one of these gain-of-function programs and shut down all 67 active programs right now. If he was going to do the right thing, because what's the end game? The end game has always been, and Bill Gates said this very clearly in 2011, the World Health Organization has stipulated this from 2011, and they recited again in 2018 and 2019. Their end game is the decrease of the population of humanity on this planet. And that's a polite way of saying that these are sociopathic murderers who are actually building weapons to conveniently turn what we call healthcare into the front line of the biggest mercenary deployment of mass murdering psychopaths we've ever seen on this planet. And we as a society need to understand that it's not coming from a foreign adversary. It's coming from domestic adversaries who are intent on destroying the orderly structure of the United States. And every single person who's been lamenting this action that's being taken by DOJ and these actions taken by the executive orders that President Trump have issued over the last 14 days, every single person protesting that is actually celebrating the genocide of not only America, but the values for which this country was first established. You cannot, under any moral justification, come up with an excuse that says it's acceptable to have a death rate of American citizens. And that's a quote that has come not only from Moderna, but also from Pfizer. They accept a death rate of American citizens for the purpose of what? And their own profiteering and the mass murder of Americans.
And that's just in the early phase, the mass death we see, obviously, what it does over time, which I want to get your expert breakdown on. But everything he's saying, folks, if you're a new viewer or listener or haven't researched it, is 100% on record. So so there's a couple issues there. Trump comes out with some moratorium on gain of function. Congress and others block more money to Dazik. Fauci's hiding out. I mean, we're seeing some good movements there. But as you said, we need a direct moratorium on all gain of function. It's already illegal. I don't even know why there needs to be a new executive order, but we need to have the Justice Department prosecute people. And we just have to get Trump and everybody else to fully realize the magnitude. Because if people ask why they would roll something out like this, it's because they believe it's too horrible for us to ever be able to deal with. But then separately, you have the Moderna CEO bragging, 2 years before COVID came out, we already had it on the shelf, which from the public documents they did. They didn't even hide that. So what's crazy is how they hide this in plain view. What is the method there?
Yeah, so this is really important. Plato talked about the fact that when people commit egregious crimes, they celebrate how much the public is willing to accept the absolute insanity of the most egregious natures of the worst of humanity. And Plato talks about this in the Republic. He says that there is a certain point in time where people actually are proud of announcing their psychopathic and genocidal plans because they actually celebrate the fact that by intimidating the population, they convince the population there's nothing that can be done. Let's be really clear on something. Elon Musk right now can disclose how much money the Gates Foundation and the Wellcome Trust put into the creation of this bioweapon. But more importantly, and we'll come back to this after the break, but it's important for us to recognize that as much as, in the last 3-4 years, I have been ridiculed, you've been ridiculed, others have been ridiculed for saying this. In June of 2023, the International Journal of Molecular Sciences published a paper, and in the paper, and I sent you a copy of it, I have it right here. In this paper, it says mRNA vaccine or gene therapy, the safety and regulatory issues. And in this paper, and I want to be really clear on this so people can go back and look, they admit to the fact that Moderna, the company Moderna, was actually established in 2000 as a program for the National Science Foundation called Darwinian Chemical Systems. Let's just slow that down for a second, because I know that what I just said is going to fly over the heads of a lot of people.
They're telling you we're bringing in the artificial selection, that they're bringing in their new evolution. They're the social Darwinists.
Exactly right. They actually had a 10-year program called Darwinian Chemical Systems. Look it up. It is the forerunner to the company Moderna. The first patent filed by Moderna was filed on a program that successfully described how mRNA would be written into the gene sequence of humanity. And lo and behold, in this article, you only have to go down to page 2 of the article, and you find out, and I'll go ahead and read it. We got 1:40 left. The anti-COVID-19 mRNA vaccines are the first mRNA vaccines marketed. These, get ready for this. These are not vaccines. These are gene therapies. And they go on to say, should classify them as a gene therapy. They're saying it. This is not Dave Martin saying it. I've said it now for years. And I've said to Peter McCullough, I've said to Bobby Kennedy, I've said to all these guys, don't fall for the name. It's not a vaccine. It's a bioweapon gene therapy. And lo and behold, in this article, guess what they talk about? They talk about the fact that it's now being transmitted through mother's milk. It's writing itself into the human genome, and we are modifying the genome. We, Alex, are watching as 4 billion souls on this planet are becoming genetically modified organisms. And you don't want to ever think that somehow or another this was justified because we mislabeled it a vaccine. This was a biological weapons program. It was administered to the general population. And now we have 3.5 or 4 billion genetically modified organisms who are actually facing an existential threat. And that was done with intent.
And notice they began changing the definition in the last 6 years, right before and then during, from the classic definition of a vaccine to what it is, just something they put in your body. I mean, this is a hack of humanity. It's their hostile, globalist, corporate takeover of the human genome, literally raping us, declaring their ownership of us, and then corrupting the entire medical system, knowing that once they launched this, most of the medical system, when they found out the truth, would join them. The final battle is coming up towards the end of next month. That'll, of course, decide whether we get.
All right. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep going.
Something really horrible. They tend institutionally to cover it up. And then once you've covered up a mass murder like this, well, now you're fully corrupted. So if you study the psychology of these Machiavellian types and these psychopaths, I mean, put up a photo here of Hotez, who is on record Fauci's mini-me, which is hard to believe, they're like Russian dolls. You know, one's like 5 feet tall, there's 4 feet tall. I'm not knocking those are short, but both of those men, by their actions and behaviors, are death cult priests. They are eugenicists. They are liars. They are frauds. They're still on TV saying the shot totally protects you and is wonderful and is good for you. Well, on record, before they rolled it out, they knew it erased your immune system. So, and look at them. They're little punks. They have a chip on their shoulder. They're passive-aggressive, psychotic killers who have put themselves on the top of the food chain through social Darwinism. Look it up. 130 years ago, the big rich robber barons of the UK, the US and Europe, were being opposed by populist movements, and they created, Darwinism, we're social Darwinists. Anything we do, vicious or evil, the people deserve, and it's our right to kill and poison and murder because that's how the universe works, and it's not exploitive, it's beautiful. And so we're God and you're not. And so now they're, like a pimp will brand his girls on their ass with a brand. They are into your genetics, and it sloughs off. It's not just those that took the shots. They know they're polluting the entire human biosphere and everything else with this vicious HIV mutagenic protein that they have now synthetically mass-produced. And then Bill Gates said, you think COVID's bad? He goes, soon terrorists will strike everyone with the worst bioweapon. And he was laughing. He meant we're the terrorists to the earth. We're the bad guys. We're going to produce what kills us. And so it's a giant sick joke. They had all these movies and all these TV shows like Utopia years before telling us how they do it, and 12 Monkeys and all of it. And then Bill Gates gets up at TED Talks and says, we got to reduce the population. We got to cut the human carbon. Ha, ha, ha. They all laugh. They're in on it. They're in on it. Again, my dad, top of his class, plan 2, 14s, goes to UT, thinking he's going to be prepped for NASA. And by the time he's 16, he gets called in and said, well, you passed all the tests. You're the very best of the whole class in the state of Texas. There's only 6 of you. They met with him each individually and said, the head of the botany department that was running Plan 2, Professor Spear, said, David, we're actually carrying on a worldwide government to carry out eugenics. It's my dad, David Jones. And my dad said, I'm not going to be part of this. And then he got out of it. But the point is that most of them say, yeah, I'm on the team because they're self-anointed. We're guardians of the earth. We need an apex predator. The excuse is, look, when there's not wolves in a city, the deer overpopulate. Well, we've got to have hunters that go out and manage it. Well, that's deer, folks. They've placed themselves in the evolutionary hierarchy as the Ubermenschen to carry all this out against us. And that's what Dr. Spear told my dad. He said, David, I'm Jewish, David. He said, not my dad's Jewish, but Dr. Spear was. He goes, this isn't like Hitler's eugenics. This is different, where we do it in an organized way to help the species in the end. Okay, so and my dad was friends with him. By the time I was like 18, my mom, who my dad met there, knew him, went to dinner with him. So my dad was still friends with him. You have to understand, he was just a member of the death cult. So I'm done ranting. I'm sorry, Dr. Martin, with your time to inject that here, but people have to get the philosophy of the self-appointed ruling elite, and we've got to get Musk and Trump fully on board understanding this if we're going to finally defeat them. I want you to continue on and then give us your breakdown on what you think they're going to pull next. As I said last week and this week, they're going to try to crash the stock market as soon as Trump does these tariffs, which he uses a bargaining chip. They weren't real tariffs, and we already see that because we have all the cards. Now the stock market's way down today. This is all going on. So I also want to get your 35,000-foot view on everything, because you're not just smart on these poison shots they call vaccines. I want to get your view on where we're going and what we can do to beat these people. So I'm done ranting. Go ahead.
Well, it's okay. In 2007, as much as this is nasty to do, I told people so, but right before the 2008 banking collapse, I actually forecast that between 2024 and 2026, which is exactly where we are, I said that the stock market would be subject to an enormous amount of manipulation of price to cover the bigger financial scandal. And this is back 2007. You can go back and look at it. It's the Arlington Institute speech. I gave it back in 2007, and it's still somewhere on YouTube. But I talked about what was called the House of Cards. And the House of Cards was a convergence that was going to happen when the United States Treasury and the United States government would realize that the socialist program that was put in place in the 1930s, which was the effort that was done to create a social system called Medicare and Medicaid, we knew, and by the way, it was known when it was established, that it would run out of money. And we knew that it was going to happen between 2024 and 2026. And it turns out that what's happening right now is something that we saw coming in 2007, which was the establishment of a series of events that would lead to 2 outcomes, Alex. One was we needed to shrink the population above the age of 65. Now, why is that important? Turns out that we knew that we were going to get into a population problem, which is we were going to have more people drawing from Social Security than Social Security could actually pay. And so what the country did was it actually had a bifurcated program. One is create the illusion of financial instability so everybody could find out and have a reason to blame the markets for the reason why all of the money they thought they were going to get from the systems that were put in place in the 1930s, Medicare and Medicaid, Social Security, they were going to, number one, eviscerate that liquidity. And how do you get the public to buy off on it? You tell them, oh my gosh, look, the stock market's falling apart. Oh my gosh, look, we found out that we're $30 trillion in debt. Oh my gosh, all of these things have happened. It's all a smokescreen. Elon Musk, when he got access to the Treasury files, the real reason why they're upset about this is what I'm saying is in those files. They know what I'm saying to be true. And the reason why you need to have a security clearance to get into the Treasury files is because it turns out that we have been accelerating the illiquidity of the Medicare and Medicaid program so that we can crater it. And that was part one. And that's the reason why you see market volatility happening in the last 48 hours. You see it happening worldwide because they're trying to pull the plug out from under the financial system so that we can actually pretend like all of this just happened. The bummer is my videos from 2007 are still up. But the other half of this equation is we needed to shrink the population. And when I talked about this, and people got very upset about this, and I was just using Bill Gates' own numbers, I said that somewhere around 1.5 billion to 2 billion people were going to be either killed or impaired because of this particular pandemic. And what I meant by that is very simple. Using their own calculus, which is the 11 to 15% population reduction they wanted, that puts you at 1.5 billion, 1.6 billion people that we're going to get off the planet. But when you have the death and disability of people who are subject to genetic modification, which, by the way, right after he came into office, not surprisingly, deep state actors like Larry Ellison came back into the White House to promote custom-made mRNA and custom-made injections and these wonderful, allegedly AI-infused technologies, which are somehow mysteriously going to save us from cancer. What they failed to point out was the very agent through which they are allegedly going to vaccinate against cancer is itself a cancer promoter. Now, why would you do that? You would do that because you need to accelerate the death rate so that the fewer over 65 population you have to satisfy with respect to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, the less political risk you have. Once again, why is it? Why is it that the Republicans are standing in the way of President Trump's nominations? They know what I am saying, and they know the dirty secret is on their watch. In the next 18 months, Medicare and Medicaid's pension program is going to be illiquid. They know that they cannot go back to the Treasury and fill the $14 trillion hole that is currently outstanding. So what do they have to do? They have to come up with a cover story to make it someone else's fault for the graft and corruption that's been going on for the last 30 years. I am on record going back to 2007 saying this was going to happen. Inside of that record, it is abundantly clear that they are actively pursuing a strategy of eviscerating the financial markets and literally killing off people so we limit the number of beneficiaries. Remember that beginning in 2012 and 2013, we knew that the Social Security program was insolvent. Not kind of insolvent, absolutely insolvent. And we know that there's something far worse. And this is the piece that people don't understand about the China leverage that's going on right now. China, in its foreign investment policy, became the purchaser of U.S. treasuries. And over the last 10 years, has been shrinking the duration of their treasury holdings to undermine the U.S. economy. When President Trump announced tariffs for China, he's not even close to scratching the surface of the economic harm that is going to come when China decides to dump their treasuries at exactly the same time that the Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid systems go illiquid. And why is that a problem? That's a problem because the real value of our economy relies on healthcare, which is the state intermediated healthcare system, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, for 18% of our GDP. If you take 18% of our GDP and diminish or erase it, which is what this event will do, and you compound that with China dumping their treasury holdings, which they've already announced they are going to do, you have an unsurvivable financial crisis on your hands, which is the reason why a guest you had on, I think, a day or two ago was talking about the silver and gold price arbitrage that's happening right now. People know what's happening. They know that the naked shorts that they've had outstanding are actually now going to come due. They know all of these things. The financial markets know it. The metals markets know it. The speculative markets know it. But the public is being duped into believing that this is somehow a tariff-linked exercise.
Well, that's exactly what I said months ago. They're going to try to say that Trump is Herbert Hoover 2.0, when it's all in the historical record that they were plunging another bubble at that point and then blamed it on Herbert Hoover. And now they're trying to do that. What is the timeline on this? And what can Trump do? What can we do to stop it?
Well, I think what we can do right now is have a public and very painful conversation. What we have to do is we have to take the Treasury data that Elon Musk and the Doge committee now, or whatever the group is that's doing this program. We need the public to know that they have been defrauded. And Alex, I'm a big fan of taking the medicine that you have to take, right? We need to face the simple facts that the administration that came before us knew that they were setting this administration up for the Hoover narrative. They knew it. They knew they were going to do it. They knew that they could put President Trump on the crosshairs so that he could get branded the Hoover presidency. They knew all of these things. And by the way, I've done shows for the last 10 years where I've talked about this as the presidential term. The 47th presidential term was going to be the Hoover administration blame game. Now, the truth is we're having this conversation now. It's happening before the actual events. But what we know is by 2026 and by 2027, and the only thing that's going to drive that is whether or not foreign governments dump their treasury holdings. That's the only thing that's going to determine the time. But between 2026 and 2027, the Social Security Trust Fund is going to dip below zero, and that means that 18% of our economy is insolvent. In the film you referenced in 2015, Future Dreaming, I actually have a conversation about this. And in American Revolution, another film I shot in 2016, I actually made an abundant reference. 10 minutes of that film is dedicated to this very topic. And I said that what would happen, and I even said then it would be President Trump who would be the president that we would paint into this corner. The fact of the matter is, we know that this was a setup so that we actually can have a crash of an economy, blame the current administration for the problems that it did not create, and then go forward with everybody running to the government that just stole from itself and say, save us. Here's the point. The point is, these are the criminals who set up this entire scheme. And the public needs to know, your viewers and listeners need to know, that we cannot go to the psychopaths that architected this program and ask them to solve the problem. This problem must be solved by individuals taking action now to make sure that their economic interests are actually insulated from what is ultimately a treasury collapse and what is ultimately a Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid collapse.
This is, by the way, the Communist Manifesto, once again, playing itself out. Like you destabilize, and then you create hardship, you create financial hardship, and then you're the answer. You're this, you swoop in and you're the savior, even though you're the one that created the hardship. It's literally just written out before us 100 years ago by Karl Marx.
And that is action we can take now that we don't have to wait for a crisis to take. And what does that mean?
By the way, this is also what our universities are promoting as the best ideology. Better than capitalism, better, not, it's anti-American. Hello, wake up, people. Creating a cult of young followers who are diehard followers of this insane leftist, globalist, Marxist agenda. Insane.
That means invest locally. That means look at the minerals that you guys have talked about. It means make sure that you have an infrastructure where your community is robust. And
decentralized now, Dr. Martin, you're dead on. So let me ask you this with the timeline.
Exactly.
It looks like Trump obviously understands this. He's trying to create the crisis now and stop this plan. Do you agree with that, A? And then B, how is he doing?
Well, listen, he doesn't have many tools left. We got a problem. And the problem is the bucket has leaked. So we can actually do a number of things. So, for example, taking the tariff approach is an interesting one because what he can do is he can repatriate manufacturing. He can repatriate energy. He can repatriate the fabrication of goods and services in this country.
And grab back strategic things that were given up, like the Panama Canal, so that physically we're in a better posture.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. We can actually make sure that we have an economic interest because remember, and people forget this in history, the Deutsche Mark right after the Second World War, ironically, within 4 years was one of the strongest currencies on the planet again. And this is after we bombed the infrastructure of Germany to oblivion, right? The Allies destroyed the manufacturing infrastructure of Germany. But within 4 years, the Deutsche Mark was back. And when the Chancellor of Germany was asked, why is the Deutsche Mark back? He said, and I'm roughly quoting, the Deutsche Mark is a representation of the full faith and confidence of the German people in German innovation and productivity. Guess what? That's the message we need here today.
Yeah.
We need a reconstruction mentality that says that we know we've got hard times ahead. There's no question about it. What Trump is doing is pulling the levers he has at his hands right now. But I just had very interesting conversations in the last 48 hours with some of the people who are part of his transition and part of his first 100-day plan.
This video needs to go down in the annals of greatness. We need to watch this video every week for the next 2 years and memorize it. He's trying to bring back productivity to the American people. We need to be able to produce in this country. We need to be self-sustaining where we don't rely on China. We don't rely on anybody else for anything. We've got all our energy, all our production, all our manufacturing, all here. So we don't have to rely on any other world government entity out there. Boom. That's how Germany rebuilt itself so fast.
And achieve energy, manufacturing, and economic independence within this country at a scale that we can't even imagine, because for the last 20 years, we've been told that we need to outsource everything. We need to make the things cheapest as possible. We need to go overseas to do everything. Well, the fact of the matter is we currently have 18 months. And that's not a long time, but it's sure better than waiting for the crisis to be on your doorstep. We have 18 months to actually rebuild infrastructure, energy, and manufacturing in this country. And everything I'm doing today, every action I'm taking, is actually part of the team of people around this country who are doing exactly the same thing. Build American business so that when we have to rely on domestic consumption, when we have to rely on domestic production, we are not starting in the moment of crisis. We need to be already moving. We need to have the ark already built before the rains come. And that's exactly what this is about.
He's doing it.
Dr. Martin, I want to just be very clear with the listeners. I know they're smart, but we're not giving somebody some political theory or our personal view. This is all cut and dry. I mean, you had a year and a half ago, the FDIC having their public meeting online, but acting like the public's dumb, saying, well, we're going to have to do bail-ins. Everything's going to collapse soon. But we've got to, should we get the public ready or not get them ready? And they basically, well, let's not talk. Let's not get them ready. But they're really saying that to get it on record for later so they can say, look, we warned you. They're all really concerned. The bad guys, the good guys, everybody is. But they don't want the public to know how serious it is. I think it's very refreshing that Elon Musk has been explaining we're doomed if we don't turn this around. Trump's doing it. Yeah. And I just hope people realize that for everything I see, Trump is really making a very strong attempt at stopping this. through soft power and through bringing economics back here. And as you said about 30 minutes ago, for all the people that are part of the globalist system and the death cult and their minions that think they're on some winning team, this is a dystopic hellscape that these totalitarians are trying to build. Musk told the World Government Forum 2 years ago, he said, cutting off resources worldwide and doing this, you'll never have a controlled collapse. You come out on top, it's going to end up causing total war and collapse. You'll get killed too. So just out of common sense, Musk has joined us. You can ask, is he a good guy or not, or is he just a survivalist? It doesn't matter. That it's very clear that Musk and Trump are on team humanity. They could be more hardcore. Maybe they think people can't handle it, but they're almost there. But like you said, regardless, it's up to you and I, all the listeners and viewers, to get out there and raise the alarm now that this is existential. This is end of the line. This is the fourth turning. It's going down right now. This is not a game. And I personally feel the responsibility so strong now, after being on air almost 31 years, that I'll be honest with people, I've never felt feelings like this. This is so intense and just at a cellular level, not just intellectually. You can feel it, and it is an intense feeling of we need to mobilize. I mean, this is everything. Yeah. This isn't just some side issue. This is everything.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, what your point is excellent. And Alex, you know, I'm a person who loves to acknowledge providence when I see it unfolding. The fact of the matter is, we're having this conversation. You know how much heat you get for having these conversations. I know how much heat I have for getting these conversations. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. This is about the future of humanity. And when we have a conversation that says we are going to promote, very clearly, we're going to promote an organic form of humanity, meaning not genetically modified. We're going to promote a humanity that understands the value of industry and labor so that we actually have honest, value for honest work. These are things that are not difficult principles. We have been conditioned to accept a narrative that says that performance doesn't matter. It's all about the criteria that you decide to self-select into, whether it's race or gender or anything else. We have been sold a bill of goods. I spent last week at the other end of a crane with blocking and tackling and moving heavy equipment into facilities that I'm building right now to produce energy here in the United States. And guess what? This guy, the guy who you see sitting here right now, was actually getting my hands greased up and kicking the dirt and moving 40-ton pieces of equipment in minus 18-degree temperatures so that we could actually move the future of America forward. What I'm saying is really simple. This is not a time to sit and philosophize about a future. This is a time to architect a future. And we may be the 300 standing against the million Persians at Thermopylae.
Yes.
I'd rather be one of the 300 standing than the millions enslaved who have nothing to fight for but the whip and the lash on their back. Because it turns out I'm fighting for a home.
This is Sparta. Let's go. Woo! I never thought it possible that we would even have a chance to save humanity. Like, we were donezo, gonzo. You guys have no idea how epic this time that we're living in is right now. It's so epic. It's insane. We were so done. We were so gone. And I mean, gone. And somehow this miracle of the Red Sea parting, literally the Red Sea parting, and somehow Trump's in there cleaning house. But it's going to be a long battle and a long road. You're so right, Kelly. It's so good to have Alex Jones back. Let's go.
I'm fighting for a family. I'm fighting for the fact that I have a new grandchild a couple days away. I'm fighting for a future, which is a beautiful, brilliant future. And I'd rather stand with the 300 than be in the throngs of the millions. And that's where we all have to go.
And bottom line, the globalists said there was a giant bubble. They think there's too many people. They just say, let's have a controlled collapse and come back out on top of it. But now their COVID program's been exposed. And so they're not in full command. Now we have a real chance at winning the future. Dr. Martin, thank you so much. The best place for people to find everything you do, I guess, will be on X, Dr. Dr. Martin World and davidmartin.world. Thank you so much for the time and Godspeed.
Dr. DRD Martin World at DRD Martin World, baby. Follow this man at DRD Martin World. Woo! Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go catch up on the gazillion things that I've already missed out on here. Yeah, everybody subscribe bell button. I might come back later with news. There's so much more. We all need to watch this video every week for the next 2 years. It needs to go down in the annals of greatness. This is he just laid out our play. Because, this isn't just an uphill battle. This is how on earth can we be saved? The powers that be, we've talked about U.S. aid having their claws in every facet of everything everywhere, including things like labor unions, including things like all the mafia terrorist organizations, aka the media, the universities, every fabric of society. They have their claws in. Plus, we are sort of being held hostage by China and everybody all over the world to try and destabilize the economy. And so we need to become self-sufficient here in America, where we can make our clothes, we can get our oil, we can get our own cars, our own everything. You know, that's how we're going to rebuild amongst this insane collapse of tyrannical fraud, tyrannical waste, tyrannical corruption of $36 trillion. It's unthinkable amount of money. It's literally an unthinkable amount of money, all this waste. The Democrats are saying nothing to look at here, nothing to see here. We just want to keep the corruption going. We don't want to be exposed. So let's demonize Elon Musk. We already saw it. We saw it that U.S. aid has already propagated a whole bunch of hit pieces with BBC against Elon Musk all over the world. Okay, $300 million spent for that. That's our tax dollars being spent for that to sabotage Elon Musk so that they don't get exposed for what they're doing. They don't want the corruption exposed. So we just got to, I mean, it's a war, guys. These senators are insane. These politicians that are going full force, Nazi style, trying to shut down Musk from exposing them and their corruption. I hear people that are like nitpicking Trump. Okay, listen, we could go back and look at George Washington and nitpick him. We could talk about some dumb things he did, I'm sure, right? But listen, it's like insignificant compared to the absolute revolution that changed the world forever as we know it. The American Revolution, he decided not to be king. They wanted to make him king. He said, nope. They wrote the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence. And so he created this, and it's been the most amazing thing that's ever happened practically on planet Earth. And what Trump, you know, so let's not nitpick George Washington. All right. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to have our radars up for Trump doing stuff that he maybe shouldn't be getting involved in or whatever. So we want to, but it's asinine right now to say that Trump isn't blowing all of our minds, doing literally a million times better than what I could have even hoped. He's brought hope back to humanity. He's brought hope back to the United States. It was literally hopeless. We were literally gone, and he's doing things unthinkable, like getting out of the WHO, you know, the World Health Organization, getting out of the UN. He's taken on the powers that be. He's taken on the media. He's taken on all the corruption. He's bringing in the right people that will also do the same, such as Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, Kash Patel, you know, and so there's hope. So like to literally criticize Donald Trump, like I hear people doing over like little things. Okay. Now, we did live through Donald Trump getting duped by a bunch of shady Republicans, getting duped by people like Bill Gates, Anthony Fauci, you know, all these different people. Yeah. Okay. But you can't, it's like literally a completely different picture now. It's apples and oranges. He is light years ahead of what we could have even hoped or imagined he could be doing. Literally fighting for the people. He's not fighting for his own wealth. Neither is Elon Musk. He's fighting for freedom of speech, transparency, and rooting out the corruption that happens all over the world, calling it out for what it is, because we know that every country, every freaking politician, practically all in the history of planet Earth, all the kings in the Bible, all the countries everywhere always have to have corruption after corruption after corruption. And it's like we can't escape it. It's like there's no hope. Well, guess what? We're actually escaping the corruption right now. We're escaping it right now because Musk is actually just exposing the corruption. Let's go. Woo! Maybe I'll be back later. Love you guys. Let's go.